That was a life storage stone, and it was capable of storing living creatures temporarily. Many life rings were created using low-level life storage stone, making it so they could only store plants. However, high-level life storage stones could accept living creatures. It was an extremely miraculous stone. The space inside it had no natural laws and no spiritual chi. It could barely give enough life energy for its inhabitants to not immediately die. Long Chen's sword stopped right before slashing through Gui Yan's head. But because it happened too suddenly, his sword swiped across Gui Yan's forehead, drawing blood. Long Chen had no choice but to stop. Small faces floated up one by one on the life storage stone. He could see hundreds of the spirit race women lying in that static space, completely unmoving. Long Chen, I know you won't kill me. Gui Yan clenched the stone. As long as he crushed it, those spirit race women would be killed. Long Chen didn't say anything and just stared at Gui Yan coldly. He hadn't expected him to have such a trump card. No matter what abilities Long Chen had, he wouldn't be able to kill Gui Yan now. Was this the karmic luck of a rank 9 celestial? Long Chen, the warriors of the spirit race aren't afraid of death. As long as you kill him, they'll be happy even in death. Otherwise, with this person's power, he'll kill even more of our sisters in the future. The one called the Spirit Guard brought the others back. Looking at the life storage rock, she felt a bit unwilling, but she still urged Long Chen to kill Gui Yan. That made Gui Yan's expression change. Right now, he could only use these hostages to extort Long Chen. This was his final trump card. Without it, he would definitely die. Long Chen, I trust you won't do that. You'll let me go. Gui Yan stared at Long Chen confidently. You know me so well? Long Chen stabbed his sword into the ground, leaning on it. His expression was calm. Give up on scheming. Even if you could defeat me, you can't kill me instantly. It's impossible for you to prevent me from crushing this life storage rock. Gui Yan seemed to see through Long Chen's thoughts. Long Chen was truly unable to do this. He had dozens of ways to kill Gui Yan, but he couldn't stop him from crushing the life storage stone right before his death. Even if Meng Qi, Tang Wana, Gu Yang, and the others helped, it was impossible. This trump card of Gui Yan's just happened to be Long Chen's weak point. You win. Leave the life storage ring, and I'll let you go, sighed Long Chen. Long Chen, it's not worth it. The spirit guard was startled. No, killing him isn't worth it. In my eyes, he's just a dog. I can take his life whenever I want. Getting the lives of hundreds of sisters for the life of a dog is an excellent trade, said Long Chen. Gui Yan's expression sank, but he didn't say anything. Although he was mocked by Long Chen, he knew he had managed to save his life. I want to bring the life storage stone with me. You can send someone probe Gui Yan cautiously. Don't play this game with me. Although you have a trump card, it isn't as powerful as you think. You can threaten me, but you can't threaten the people of the spirit race. If you try taking a single inch, I won't be so lenient, said Long Chen coldly. Alright, I swear you aren't qualified to swear an oath with me. Gui Yan, it seems you still don't understand your situation. You have no qualifications to bargain or make conditions right now. The people you've captured aren't people from the Dragonblood Legion. Do you understand? Gui Yan's expression changed several times. He shouted, Then how do I know you won't go back on your word as soon as I hand over the life storage stone? My boss just feels sorry for these sisters. Your life isn't even worth a fart to him. Furthermore, who do you think my boss is? Within all the Central Plains, he's well known for being a real man. When does he ever go back on his word? As for your own garbage reputation, how much crap do you think that's worth? Shouted Guoran. Gui Yan thought about it, and he agreed that it was true. Although Long Chen was famed for being domineering and vicious, he never went back on his word. There were many things people cursed him for, but that wasn't one of them. Spirit race, if I hand over this life storage stone, will you attack me? Gui Yan still wasn't at ease, and he shouted to the spirit race experts. His Ghost King was destroyed, and his combat power had dropped precipitously. Let alone Long Chen, even the spirit guard could kill him. Long Chen is the friend of the spirit race. His attitude is our attitude as well, said the spirit guard. Although they all wanted Guiyen dead, they also hoped for their sisters to return alive. This contradiction made it so although they were unwilling to see Long Chen release Guiyen, they were grateful to him as well for the lives of their sisters. Fine, I'll trust you this time. Guiyen clenched his teeth. He knew he had no other choices and tossed the life storage stone to Long Chen. Long Chen received it and tossed it to the spirit guard. The spirit guard activated it, and light flashed. Hundreds of spirit race women appeared on the battlefield. The other spirit race women went up and pressed their hands on their foreheads. Life energy poured into them, awakening them. Can I leave now? Guiyen was still a bit worried. His life was in Long Chen's hands. Scram. Long Chen had originally wanted to ask him some more things, but asking the spirit race experts would probably be better. Guiyen took out another teleportation talisman. Crushing it, spatial energy wrapped around him. But just as he was about to be teleported away, an arrow shot through the teleportation talisman. Bastard, are you going back on your words? Roared Guiyen. Sorry, truly sorry. My bow went out of my control. Please, go ahead and take out another talisman, apologized Guoran. But it was obvious to everyone he had done it on purpose. Do you think teleportation talismans are cabbages? I only had 2. Roared Guiyen. Is that so? Then, do you want me to send you off? Guoran raised a dark red crossbow, his expression sincere. This new crossbow was a new invention, and the pressure it emitted gave others a chill. Long Chen, what do you think you're doing? Demanded Guiyen. Hurry up and scram. Long Chen frowned impatiently. Guiyen looked from Long Chen to Guoran to his knocked crossbow. Clenching his teeth, he transformed into a ray of light that shot into the distance. Guoran followed him with the point of his crossbow, ready to attack at any time. But Long Chen didn't give the order. Boss, he really is going to get away, said Guoran unwillingly. Let him go. I let him go on purpose. Long Chen was nonchalant. On purpose. Everyone was flabbergasted. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't look like he had done this on purpose. Meng Qi, this is Guiyen's purest essence blood from his forehead. With your power, you should be able to use it to track his approximate position, right? Long Chen handed a drop of essence blood to Meng Qi. Seeing that, Gu Yang and the others came to a sudden comprehension. It seemed that Long Chen had intentionally pierced Guiyen's forehead at that time. He had used his sword to extract a drop of Guiyen's purest essence blood. As for Guiyen, in that life and death juncture, he hadn't noticed Long Chen doing this. The essence blood from the space between a person's eyebrows was their purest. That was where their soul was condensed. It was a place where a person's qi, soul, and essence met. Yes, this should be no problem. Meng Qi smiled. She was a rank 9 celestial, and her soul energy was fused with her heavenly Tao energy. Tracking a person's general position was truly simple for her. Boss, let me prostrate myself toward you. Guoran worshipfully looked at Long Chen. Long Chen wasn't just powerful, his ability to adapt to sudden changes was also monstrous. Guiyen had forced him into a passive position, but because of this drop of essence blood, the initiative was once more in Long Chen's hands. Best of all, Guiyen had no idea that this essence blood was in Long Chen's hands. His position was in Long Chen's control now. Respected friends, thank you for your help. The spirit race will always remember your kindness. At this time, the spirit guard bowed toward Long Chen in a very strange and ancient manner. The other spirit race women followed along, expressing their gratitude to Long Chen. You're too courteous. I want to ask, can you bring me to see that senior from your forest of life? I came here in order to thank her, said Long Chen. Of course we can. The spirit guard answered directly, and so they all boarded the flying boat. The Dragonblood Legion became lively because these beautiful women of the spirit race were wearing very popular clothes. Long Chen had to cough very loudly a few times for them to settle down. Long Chen found that these spirit race women didn't show the slightest shyness in the face of the Dragonblood warriors' fiery gazes. Their expressions were very natural. In fact, they seemed pure and naive, like newborns. Through a simple conversation, Long Chen learned that this battlefield had just been an outpost. The true battle had yet to start, but the situation was already very tense for them. Long Chen learned that the heaven-devouring forest was called the Dark Forest in the spirit world. They were the enemies of the forest of life. The two sides were like water and fire, and they had been fighting for countless years. As they flew, they saw more and more spirit race experts patrolling this area. It seemed they had entered the territory of the spirit race now. When the flying boat first passed those spirit race experts, they were startled and about to activate the alarm before they saw the spirit guard waving to them. The battlefield here was huge. Even with the flying boat, it took them some time before they saw a verdant, thriving forest. When he saw that forest, Long Chen smiled. That was a familiar aura. Endless life energy invigorated everyone's minds. It was completely different from the dark forest. This place was full of tranquil air that freed people of their worries. Just entering this forest would make a person feel like their heart was being cleansed. When Long Chen and the others came off the flying boat, they couldn't help closing their eyes and sensing that sacred and pure energy in the air. It made them feel so close to the forest. Long Chen had felt this aura before. This was the aura the forest divinity had possessed, but now it was much denser. Towering trees still covered the sky, but sunlight managed to sprinkle on the ground. From a distance, it looked like streaking rainbows were roaming within the forest. It was a world of fantasy. How beautiful! Meng Qi was enchanted by this dreamlike forest. Friends, please come. They had only just begun appreciating this beautiful world when a translucent figure walked out of the forest. Forest divinity? It's good to see you again. Thank you for your favor from back then. That was the only reason I could reach my current level. Long Chen immediately recognized her familiar voice and aura. The translucent figure walked out of the forest. Ripples condensed into a graceful woman wearing a green dress and an emerald hat. I am Ling Yao. I know the human race's cultivators don't like to bother with too much etiquette, so you can call me Sister Ling Yao. A single smile from her made everyone feel like they were being cleansed by spring wind. They all felt a good feeling for her that came from the bottom of their hearts. I should be the one to thank you. If it hadn't been for you, it would have been impossible for me to return to the spirit world so quickly. Come, let me welcome you to the forest of life. Ling Yao stretched out her hand. Divine light fell and condensed a rainbow bridge that stretched into the depths of the forest. This rainbow was composed of countless rainbow-colored leaves. As they walked along with it through the giant forest, immortal qi swirled around them, making them feel like they had entered an immortal world. Lights began to twinkle from the huge trees. They were coming from butterflies that flew through the forest. Their wings gave off a fairy light that adorned the forest, making it feel dreamlike. Meng Qi and Tang Wan'er were both intoxicated with this beauty. They gently reached out their hands, and butterflies flew over to them, landing on their hands and arms. Their fairy light illuminated their faces. Not even a master painter would be able to capture that scene. When Long Chen saw them like that, he was simply stunned. More and more butterflies came over, circling around everyone. Some brazen ones landed on their bodies. Even the dragon blood warriors involuntarily came to a stop, afraid that if they moved, they would scare them away. These butterflies were incredibly beautiful, but they looked extremely weak. The dragon blood warriors didn't dare to touch them in fear of harming them. Seeing more and more of the butterflies coming, Ling Yao sighed emotionally. Dream butterflies, go play somewhere else. Our guests need to keep going. The butterflies were like naughty children that were shooed off by an adult, and they scattered. In that instant, they filled the air, illuminating everything for a moment. The light then slowly faded deeper into the forest. Sister Ling Yao, the spirit world is so beautiful. Can we come here more often? Asked Tang Wan'er, completely infatuated with this world. Of course you can. As long as our forest of life is still present, you can come whenever you want. Ling Yao smiled, but Long Chen saw an unnatural expression flitted across her eyes. Sister Ling Yao, I came here to repay my debt to you. If it hadn't been for your divine life elixir, I would probably have died a long time ago. So no matter what troubles the forest of life has, I will do my best to help, even if I have to sacrifice my life, promised Long Chen. He could see that the Forest of Life was most likely in an extremely bad situation. Sister Ling Yao, since you saved our boss, the entire Dragonblood Legion will help repay you. Without boss, we wouldn't have our current achievements. So we will stand together with you no matter what, added Guoran heroically. They all knew that Long Chen was someone who cared deeply about returning debts. The favor of a drop of water in need had to be repaid with a gushing spring. As for Long Chen's debt to her, it was truly enormous. Ling Yao gratefully bowed. Thank you for your kind intentions. Please just follow me. The Spirit Emperor has been waiting for a long time. Ling Yao continued to lead the way. More and more life forms appeared in the forest, curiously staring at them. Long Chen and the others saw huge tigers lying on the ground, resting. They also saw huge pythons extending their heads to stare at them. 11th rank magical beasts? Those magical beasts didn't give off any malice, but their auras were extremely shocking. They were magical beasts on the life star level. Although 11th rank magical beasts were on the same level as human life star experts, there was a great gap in combat power. An 11th rank magical beast could instantly kill ordinary life star experts. However, these magical beasts didn't give off any hostility as they passed. More and more of them appeared as they entered deeper into the forest, but they were all very tranquil. It was like they were domesticated. They are the protector spirit beasts of the Forest of Life. They're our friends. They'll only attack when facing the brutal dark forest, explained Ling Yao. Eventually, a large open space appeared in front of them. Many floating islands hung in the air. The flying islands were all of different sizes. The larger ones would be hundreds of miles wide, while the smaller ones were just a few meters. Those islands were overflowing with greenery. They were like green clouds floating in the sky. Spring water flowed down from them. Under the sunlight, it was especially dazzling. They were like silver rivers flowing down from the heavens. Such beauty was something Long Chen and the others had never imagined even in their dreams. They were all intoxicated by the sight. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to rise. Only then did they realize that the rainbow bridge beneath them had disappeared, replaced with a rainbow-colored parrot that was carrying them to the floating islands. They flew past thousands of floating islands. From this height, their admiration of the spirit world's supernatural beauty increased even more. Originally, the spirit world had 8 places with similar floating islands. Unfortunately, this place is the only one left. Seeing that Long Chen and the others were stunned by the beauty here, Ling Yao was first proud, but then she lamented. The dark forest would destroy such beauty? Raged Tang Wan. After entering the Forest of Life, they sensed a feeling of unprecedented tranquility. It made them feel even more disgust for the outside world slaughter. When this place was compared to the dark forest, one was a wonderland, while one was hell on earth. All of them felt regret that those other floating islands had been ruined. Long Chen, let's eliminate the dark forest. Guoran was also enraged. How are we supposed to eliminate them? With your mouth? Demanded Long Chen. Did Guoran think he could brag about such a thing? Just how vast was the dark forest? They had countless tree demons. The portion they had traveled through was probably less than 1/1,000,000th of the total dark forest. The only reason the dark forest had allowed them to pass was because the trees had mistaken them to be on their side. That was why they had managed to go straight to the battlefield. But if this hadn't happened, they would have had to face terrifying tree demons and berserk magical beasts. Long Chen couldn't help but feel that his power was too minuscule. The Forest of Life was also extremely powerful. Just those magical beasts they had seen on the way represented a terrifying force. Furthermore, those magical beasts should just be a portion of what the Forest of Life had. The Forest of Life was shockingly powerful, so Guoran's bragging was out of place. Boss, of course I'm just bragging, but I'm sure an unrivaled hero like you can do it. Guoran laughed mischievously, pulling Long Chen up so his fall would be worse. Long Chen, the dark forest is too evil. I know you have some evil plots, some wise stratagems to help the Forest of Life. Tang Wanner held Long Chen's hand, standing on the same front as Guoran. Then she looked around and whispered, "Once you drive away the dark forest, think about how nice it would be if we came to live here." "You want to live here?" Long Chun was first startled, but then when he thought about it, once all his problems were resolved, to bring a bunch of beauties and come live in seclusion in the spirit world sounded perfect. They could do some good things and have a whole group of babies. If he could have such a life, he wouldn't exchange it even for the chance to become a god. 2 hours later, they flew past the region of floating islands. But what greeted them was a desert. The terrain changed so suddenly that it caught them off guard. There was only a single tree within the desert. At this time, it was night, and they could see the tree piercing into the sky. They had never seen such a giant tree. Its branches were huge and covered the sky. The stars that twinkled above them looked like the tree's fruit. However, Long Chun saw that the tips of the branches were starting to wither. The tree was giant, but it also gave off a feeling that its vitality was about to run out. When Long Chen and the others arrived, a gentle rain floated down. However, that wasn't rain, but women of the spirit race. They were flying down from the giant tree. A sea of beautiful women surged over to their side, and Guoran lost his voice. It was his first time seeing so many beautiful women. "Respected guests, welcome to the spirit world." Just at this moment, a voice rang out, and all the spirit race women knelt on the ground. Ripples spread from the branches of the giant tree. A rain of light fell, and a slender figure appeared within it. She was a beautiful woman who looked to be in her 30s. She was slender, and her hair was tied in a high knot. Each part of her was beautiful. She held a wooden staff in her right hand. Immortal mist revolved around the staff, and an emerald gemstone was inlaid in its head. Powerful life energy fluctuations came from it, as though it was alive. When she appeared, all the spirit race women knelt on the ground, and their hands clasped over their chests. Their expressions were pious as if they were offering their respects to a god. "Greetings, senior." Long Chen didn't know what he was supposed to call her, so he simply acted in accordance with the human race's customs. When Ling Yao returned, she mentioned you. "For you to come to my spirit world with kindness in your hearts, you are my respected guest." The beautiful woman smiled. "Long Chen, this is the leader of the spirit world, the spirit emperor," said Ling Yao. Long Chen was a bit speechless. Why hadn't she introduced them earlier? He was just about to open his mouth and switch senior with spirit emperor. Yet the spirit emperor waved it off. Spirit world's customs are completely different from the human race's. You don't need to be constrained in it. As the respected guests of my spirit race, I'd like to invite you to dance together with the women of my spirit race. Music suddenly began to fill the air. Long Chen and the others raised their heads to see that it was coming from birds that had filled the air. The spirit race women began to dance. Each of their movements was graceful and elegant. Long Chen and the others were a bit embarrassed, because these women only had leaves covering their private areas. A great deal of their skin was exposed, making this scene too stimulating. However, the women then began to laughingly pull the Dragonblood warriors into their dance. Those Dragonblood warriors became even more embarrassed. When it came to hacking people with their blades, they had some skill. But having coarse men like them dance made them feel like they might die of embarrassment. Furthermore, with the spirit race women holding their hands, their faces turned completely red. However, they quickly found that these women were as pure as children. They had no other intentions, which made them feel ashamed of their thoughts. The wood cultivators quickly became accustomed. They were the first to feel the purity of these spirit race women. Tang Wana was also very unrestrained, dancing with 2 of the spirit race women. Tankling laughter came from them occasionally. It was like everyone was being brought back to their childhood and was simply playing. Everyone gradually became accustomed. The flashy Guoran did his best to display his own dance as he was surrounded by a group of women. It looked about as ugly as a bear trying to scratch its own back, making these women clap and laugh. As for Guoran, he thought they were praising his dancing, and he began to dance even harder. "Long Chen, are you not dancing?" asked Ling Yao. "Me? I think I'll pass. If I start dancing, I think I'll be even worse than that fellow." Long Chen looked at Guoran. Come, I'll show you. It's very simple. Ling Yao grabbed Long Chen's arm and pulled him into a dance. In truth, their dance was very simple. There were only a few movements, and it wasn't something that required great skill. Long Chen couldn't refuse a dance request from the person who had saved his life, so he thickened his skin and danced. He matched Ling Yao's movements. He quickly sensed something strange. As he entered the rhythm of the dance, he noticed a strange air flow around him. It felt like his heart was being cleansed by the dance, as if his soul was being purified. This was a feeling that made a person abandon all their misgivings and become one with the world. In just a moment, Long Chen had relaxed a great deal. He felt like he had returned to his childhood and was gleefully playing under the watchful eye of his mother. There was no mocking, no struggle, and no competition. It felt like they were all bathed in sunlight, playing like carefree children. This feeling was something that had long since been forgotten under the torrent of blood and battle. Today, they finally found it again. Tang Wanhao was dancing gaily, while Meng Qi was also dancing with one of the spirit race women, an expression of peace and contentment on her face. This dance is called the spirit of life. It's the blessing the life God left for us. Whether you are in a good mood or a bad mood, whether you are angry or sorrowful, as long as you dance this dance, the wounds of your heart will be soothed, and you will feel happy and safe. Ling Yao looked up at the tree above them. A grateful and devout expression appeared on her face. Long Chen was startled. Was this giant tree the spirit race's life god? After an unknown amount of time, everyone became exhausted. Long Chen was also one of them, and he fell asleep without realizing it. It was like he had gotten tired of playing and was now sleeping in the embrace of his mother. He felt completely safe in her embrace. He didn't know how long he stayed in that moment, but this dream suddenly took a turn. A bottomless abyss appeared behind him, and he felt like he would drop and break all his bones as soon as he turned. He instantly awoke. Waking up, Long Chen realized he was lying in Ling Yao's embrace. She was staring at him with care. Sorry about this. Long Chen hastily crawled up. He found that all the Dragon Blood Legion was asleep, each of them in the embrace of a woman. Those spirit race women had spiritual light flowing around them. The Dragon Blood warriors were like sleeping babies, lying in their embrace. They are enjoying the blessing of the life god. The life god's power is soothing their sorrows, letting their souls sublimate. But you woke as soon as you fell asleep. It seems you have too many burdens to relax. The Spirit Emperor walked over, a trace of pity in her eyes as she stared at Long Chen. Long Chen smiled slightly. It's not that bad. There are many things that I have to carry, and I can't just run away from them. If I did, it would be tossing my burdens to someone else, and that's not what a man should do. Spirit Emperor, I came to the spirit world to return my debt, but it seems, without even paying my debt, I've accumulated a new one. He knew that the Dragon Blood Legion was in a special, fetus-like state. This kind of state was something all cultivators would long to achieve. The meditative state was a state of spiritual emptiness. By releasing everything, you became closer to the heavenly Taoists and could comprehend them better. However, this state was artificial. Just by wanting to enter this state, you had a goal, which contradicted the point of this state. That made it very difficult for one to grasp anything about the heavenly Taoists. Despite its low efficiency, this meditative state was the only cultivation method to get closer to the heavenly Taoists, so everyone had to use it to increase their mental realms. A person's mental realm was just as important as their cultivation realm. Normally, the mental realm had to be higher than the cultivation realm. The mental realm was like a canal, while the cultivation base was the water. The canal had to be constructed perfectly to allow water to flow through it. If a person's mental realm wasn't high enough and their cultivation base sharply exceeded it, it could easily ruin a person's foundation and cause a heart devil. So there were many geniuses that couldn't put their full energy into raising their cultivation base because their mental realms were lagging. Now the Dragon Blood Legion was in an innate meditative state. This was completely different than when cultivators forced themselves into a meditative state. In the secular world's words, everything you gained while you were still in the womb was innate, while everything you had after you were born was acquired. Once you were born, you couldn't gain more innate things. But the Dragonblood Legion had returned to a fetus-like state. This was practically a heaven-defying opportunity for them. As long as their mental realms were high enough, Long Chun could refine medicinal pills for them to raise their cultivation bases rapidly. That was why he was bitterly smiling. He hadn't even returned his debt, and a new one was already piled onto it. There's no need for you to care about this debt. Anyone who sincerely has good intentions for our spirit race is our precious guest. Do you know those dream butterflies you attracted when you first entered the forest of life? The dream butterflies are the most sensitive spirit creatures within this forest. For them to like you means you truly care about us. We don't have anything to repay you with, so this is just a bit of kindness from us, said the Spirit Emperor. Spirit Emperor, what trouble have you encountered? I want to help you, said Long Chen. This trouble isn't so simple. It might not be long before the forest of life will cease to exist. Is it really so grave? The dark forest has gathered reinforcements from many different powers, inflating their forces. And even before this, just the dark forest alone was hard enough to resist. Now, the spirit race warriors are no longer able to block them, and the battle lines are being forced closer and closer to us. The forest of life itself is not able to kill other life forms, and being infected by their grievance and resentment is toxic to us. The spirit race warriors and spirit beasts are the only things we can depend on. But looking at the current situation, there's no hope, sighed the Spirit Emperor. So thank you for coming here, but we don't want to implicate you. That would just make us feel worse. Throwing away your lives for a hopeless battle isn't worth it. Since we've come, we came prepared. Even if we have to die, we will stand beside you. Even if we have to fight to the last man, to the last drop of blood. This is the spirit of the Dragonblood Legion, said Long Chen firmly. This was his principles, and the principles of the Dragonblood Legion. But if you help us, you will become the enemies of all the martial heaven continent's powers, warned the Spirit Emperor. Why would that happen? Asked Long Chen with shock. The answer would take a long time to explain. The Spirit Queen sighed and began to tell Long Chen a story he had never heard before. Rumor had it that in the immortal era, the spirit world had had very good relationships with the human race. The spirit race had powerful life energy skills and had helped the human race countless times against their powerful enemies. In that battle of the immortal era, in order to help the human race, the spirit world had lost many of its experts. It had been forced to seal itself off to recover. Then the Dark Era came. The spirit world was also attacked, with foreign tree demons invading. At that time, they still hadn't recovered from their previous losses. When the Dark Era ended, the martial heaven continent had been devastated, and the spirit world had taken disastrous losses. The dark forest grew stronger. At first, they only managed to take over a small part of the spirit world, but now they began to spread. Other than their powerful tree demons, the dark forest also had berserk magical beasts. As for the forest of life spirit trees, they couldn't kill other creatures. Only their spirit race warriors and spirit beasts could fight them. However, they were unable to stop the advance of the dark forest. The dark forest's territory grew greater and greater, while the forest of life's territory shrank with each passing year. This was a slow battle. Since the dark era had passed, and the human race had recovered, the spirit race asked for help. However, the sovereigns that had once led the human race heroically had all fallen, and the martial heaven continent had completely changed. Each person was selfish, and no one came to help the spirit race. In fact, people began to curse the spirit race for betraying their trust and not helping the martial heaven continent during the dark era. They thought that the huge losses they had taken were all because of the spirit race's betrayal. How could they be so shameless? Raged Long Chen. This was too evil. Although he hadn't spent a long time with the spirit race's people, he had no doubt whatsoever toward them. They would never lie. If they just didn't help us, that would be one thing. But then after having a falling out with us, they began to help the dark forest suppress us, said the Spirit Queen sadly. Are they worse than beasts? Long Chen couldn't imagine this. Just what had happened to the human race? Why would they do something so treacherous? Suddenly he had a thought. Could it be? Yes. It stemmed from greed. Everything in the forest of life is filled with life essence. The spirit beasts, the spirit trees, the spirit warriors, all life forms within the forest of life are treasures in the outside world that can extend a person's lifespan. As expected. In front of great enticement, humans would also become depraved. Even a saint could become a devil. Does the entire martial heaven continent side with the dark forest? Asked Long Chen. If the Shen Dao sect had also sided with the dark forest, he wouldn't know how to feel about it. About all of them. The corrupt path, the ancient races, Pill Valley, the Shen beasts, they all stood by the side of the dark forest. As for the righteous path, they acted like they didn't see anything. But some sects stealthily sent some people to kill the creatures in the forest of life, so the righteous path also isn't our friend, answered the Spirit Queen. Hearing this, Long Chen sighed with relief. As long as the Shen Dao sect hadn't participated in killing them, he could accept it. He finally realized what Li Tianxian had been about to tell him. Clearly, Li Tianxian had already figured out the situation in the spirit world and had predicted that Long Chen would be surrounded by enemies. But even if Li Tianxian had told him all this, Long Chen would still have come to the spirit world without any hesitation. The thing that disappointed him was that whether it was the Shen Dao sect, the Heaven-Splitting Battle sect, the Heavenly Sword Gate, or the Wine God Palace, all these sects he had a close relationship with had all chosen to be silent in the face of the spirit world's crisis. Then he supposed that any single sect couldn't become enemies with so many sections. They could only act like they didn't know anything. At the same time as he was disappointed, he was enraged. If people could abandon the allies that had fought alongside them so easily, were they even worthy of being called cultivators? Was this in order to live a longer but sullen life? If you didn't even dare to do the things you wanted to do, then what was the point of cultivating? Spirit Queen, on behalf of the human race, let me apologize. I'm ashamed of my ancestors for their actions. But the Dragon Blood Legion and I will stand together with you. We will live and die together, swore Long Chen. Are you prepared to become enemies with the entire martial heaven continent? Asked the Spirit Queen. If I have to be enemies with them, then fine. In any case, I have plenty of enemies already. I don't mind increasing the scale a bit more. Long Chen smiled. Wasn't that precisely the case? The ancient races, corrupt path, and Pill Valley were his mortal enemies. Which one didn't want his life? As for the Shen beasts, as soon as he had accepted Cloud, he had made his preparations to be enemies with them. To put it bluntly, a dead pig wasn't afraid of boiling water. Since things had already reached this point, he might as well do what he wanted. Although he had many things to accomplish, if he didn't even dare to repay his debts, then would having a higher cultivation base matter? This wasn't his first time putting his life on the line, and he was already used to it. Long Chen, thank you. The Spirit Queen was extremely grateful. After being betrayed by so many humans, this was her first time encountering a human who would sacrifice their life for them for a small favor. Spirit Queen, I have many questions I want to ask you. Ask away. As long as I know, I will answer. Why are the spirit warriors all women? Where are the male warriors? This was something that he had been holding back for a long time. In all the forest of life, he hadn't seen a single male. There are no male warriors in our spirit race. These warriors are not humans. They are the fruit of the life god. The Spirit Queen raised her head to look at the giant tree. Their fruit? Long Chen jumped in shock. How was this possible? Yes, the fruit of the life god tree. They took human form with the life god tree's power. Bows and arrows are the martial weapons that allow them to unleash their greatest power. Although their arrows are made of ordinary wood, when they shoot, they will pray to the life god, giving their arrows divine power that can pierce the armor of experts and the hide of magical beasts. Now Long Chen understood why their arrows were so strangely powerful. It is because they are the fruit of the life god tree that they are like pure and naive children. They are like a sheet of white paper. After years of fighting against the dark forest, countless spirit warriors have lost their lives. In order to protect everyone, the life god has spent all its energy. You can also see how bad the life god tree situation is. It's unable to give birth to any more spirit warriors. Originally, when the spirit warriors die, a portion of them will transform into spiritual chi and return to the forest of life to be absorbed by the life god tree. But when the martial heaven continent's experts capture them, they will refine them into divine life elixir. Fury appeared on the Spirit Queen's face. The spirit warriors who landed in enemy hands all suffered miserably. This was why Guiyen had captured those spirit warriors. But with the corrupt path's lecherousness and cruelty, they would inflict even more suffering on them. What is the origin of the Dark Forest? They invaded the spirit world during the Dark Era. Was that a coincidence or part of a scheme? If it's part of a scheme, what is their goal? Long Chen was extremely curious toward the Dark Forest. Just how had those tree demons formed an agreement with the martial heaven continent's experts? I'm ashamed to say that our heads aren't as clever as the human races. We've never been able to figure out why they appeared, said the Spirit Queen apologetically. Long Chen was dumbfounded. Even after tens of thousands of years, they were unable to figure out their goal? He quickly thought of how Pill Valley's experts said that the Dark Forest tree demons were all wooden-headed fools. They weren't very intelligent. It was just that the Spirit Queen looked very wise, so it was unexpected that even she wouldn't know such a thing. That's fine. We can figure that out later. Then tell me, other than their greed for the forest of life, is there anything else that attracts the martial heaven continent's warriors here? Yes. Within the spirit world lies part of the ancient battlefield. Back when the human race was still allied with the spirit world, when devil creatures invaded us, they were suppressed by a sovereign. That battle was extremely intense, and heaven and earth were destroyed. Spatial cracks now litter that region. Rumor has it that countless experts of both the humans and those devil creatures died at that time, and their treasures were left behind. However, the divine might of a sovereign still lingers there, so neither we nor the Dark Forest tree demons can approach there without being annihilated, said the Spirit Queen. A sovereign's divine might that makes you unable to approach the battlefield? Long Chen was shocked to learn that a sovereign had once fought in the spirit world. Yes. Only humans can get close to that area, but I heard that the battlefield is extremely dangerous. Countless adventurers have entered without ever leaving. Sovereigns were legendary existences that dominated anyone in the same realm. Only one sovereign would appear in one generation, so the title of sovereign was synonymous with unrivaled. Rumor had it that the sovereigns were the result of all the world's karmic flow condensing into one person. Only one sovereign could be born in one era, and only when that sovereign fell would it be possible for a second sovereign to be born. So the sovereigns that had risen during previous eras were all figures that had led that era. They were godlike existences. I'll definitely have to go to that battlefield. Perhaps I can get some treasures. A fiery light appeared in Long Chen's eyes. After chatting with the Spirit Queen for a long time, he gained an understanding of the Forest of Life's power. The Forest of Life had 90 million spirit warriors. They possessed such long lifespans that they had to be measured in millennia. The longer they lived, the greater their combat power would be. They had no cultivation base rankings. Instead, it was their age that was used to divide their power. They were split into spirit kings, spirit generals, spirit guards, and spirit soldiers. They could generally be equivalent to the human race's life star, soul transformation, jade core, and foundation forging realms. The spirit guard that Long Chen had saved was very powerful among spirit guards, which had allowed her to fight so long against Guiyen. In truth, Guiyen hadn't been fighting all out at that time. He had intentionally let some spirit warriors escape to draw more reinforcements. His appetite was quite big. The spirit race's warriors would only reach the level of a true spirit soldier when they had reached 200 years of age. Without reaching that age, their combat power would be even lower. The spirit warriors' appearances never changed. They appeared the same as when they had just been born. Other than their own people, no one else could tell them apart. Those who had lived for 200 to 1,000 years were called spirit soldiers, 1,000 to 2,000 were spirit guards, 2,000 to 5,000 were spirit generals, and 5,000 to 10,000 were called spirit kings. When Long Chen heard this, he couldn't help being speechless. These pure and naive ladies had actually lived for so long. However, he supposed since they were the fruit of the life god tree, he could understand it. It was just regretful that the spirit race had taken huge losses to help the human race during the battle of the immortal era. Then the dark forest had come and continuously fought against the spirit race until there were no longer any spirit kings left. There were less than 10,000 spirit generals and about 8 million spirit guards. But not all the spirit guards were as strong as the one Long Chen had encountered. That spirit guard had almost reached the level of a spirit general, which was why she had been able to block Gray Yen. Then there were over 80 million spirit soldiers. There were also over 3,000 11th rank magical beasts, 100,000 10th rank magical beasts, and an uncountable number below that level in the Forest of Life. A force of this level would be shocking on the Martial Heaven continent. However, compared to the Dark Forest, the Forest of Life didn't have the slightest chance of winning. That was because the Dark Forest had finally brought back the heaven-devouring forest they had set up on the Martial Heaven continent in order to raise a group of extremely powerful tree demons. The Martial Heaven continent was different from the spirit world. The Martial Heaven continent was full of strife and slaughter, and tree demons all liked to absorb that air. It was beneficial to their growth. Furthermore, the spirit trees were unable to directly participate in the battle. They could only bestow their power to the spirit warriors and spirit beasts. When they were injured, they would use their own energy to heal them. The tree demons had no such restriction. How long ago did they suddenly get reinforced? Long Chen suddenly thought of something. 3 months and 17 days ago according to the units of the Martial Heaven continent. What about it? Asked the Spirit Queen upon seeing Long Chen's expression change. Over 3.5 months ago? That's not long after I caused a falling out with Pill Valley. Long Chen gave a simple summary of what he had done in Pill Valley. The Spirit Queen was completely dumbfounded. Long Chen had almost destroyed Pill Valley, as well as provoked a huge fight between them and the Heaven-Devouring Forest, causing the Heaven-Devouring Forest to take heavy losses. The Dark Forest has secret connections to many of the powers of the Martial Heaven continent. So I will make a very brazen guess. Back when the Dark Forest first established spatial channels to spread their roots to the Martial Heaven continent, they made it seem like this was simply the actions of the Dark Forest, but the truth was that they had already received the approval of Pill Valley, the Corrupt Path, the Ancient Races, and the other various powers. That was why they weren't immediately destroyed when they first entered the continent. Once they had established themselves, they began to spread rapidly, blocking off the way from the eastern Xian region to the central Xian region. They would occasionally kill experts crossing through them, but due to their secret connections with powers like Pill Valley, they couldn't be eradicated. Because of the Heaven-Devouring Forest, the Dark Forest's power grows greater and greater at a rapid rate. Most likely, the Dark Forest doesn't even view the Forest of Life as an opponent any longer. They simply want to get more benefits from growing in the Martial Heaven continent. But because of their falling out with Pill Valley, although it looked like they settled things, they are filled with hatred. They view the Forest of Life as a fat slab of meat, and they're using you as a bargaining chip with the Corrupt Path, Ancient Races, and other powers. All these other powers were invited into the spirit world, but I believe only the Pill Valley was rejected. Pill Valley is under great pressure as it is and doesn't have the energy to participate in this matter. Others can enter and get benefits, but Pill Valley can't. This is their way of punishing Pill Valley for the previous battle. That's why, at the very least, our opponents won't include the flame cultivators of Pill Valley. That will make things much easier on us, and I'll be able to come up with certain stratagems for the battle. Do you want to hear my suggestions? Asked Long Chen. Ah. The Spirit Queen stared at him with a lost expression. She apologized. Sorry, what you're talking about is too complicated. We can't really understand. Ah. This time it was Long Chen's turn to be dumbfounded. I apologize. The life forms of the spirit world aren't very intelligent. We mostly act on instinct. I don't really understand your analysis, said the Spirit Queen. Long Chen was speechless. Even the strongest member of the spirit race, The Spirit Queen couldn't understand something like this? How were they supposed to communicate? Long Chen, we trust you and your intuition. We can sense the feelings inside a person's heart, and I can sense your goodwill for us. For you to come right as we are facing our destruction is the guidance of the Life God. I'm willing to hand over everything to you, said the Spirit Queen. Divine light began to shine from her eyes, and at the same time, ripples came from the Life God tree. The world became enveloped by a sacred light. Do you see? The Life God tree also approves of my decision. Long Chen, you are the savior of the spirit world, said the Spirit Queen. The savior? I can't even save myself. Long Chen bitterly smiled inside. But looking at the Life God tree with its heaven-piercing branches, he suddenly thought of something. Some soil appeared in his hand, and he slowly sprinkled it on the ground. The Spirit Queen stared at him curiously, but she quickly became ecstatic. This is the divine soil possessing the aura of primal chaos. Her voice quivered. Is this useful to the Life God tree? Yes, very. This primal chaos aura can make up for the life energy the Life God tree has spent. The Life God tree used up all its energy giving birth to spirit warriors. If we only had more of this soil. The Spirit Queen let out a startled cry as Long Chen waved his hand. A mountain of soil appeared, and the aura of primal chaos slowly merged into the ground. This soil came from the primal chaos bead, and Long Chen could bring out as much of this as he wanted. As the primal chaos merged into the ground, the Life God tree began to shine brightly, lighting up the sky. Its withered branches sprouted green buds. The primal chaos bead soil was incredibly effective. However, the Life God tree was so huge that this mountain of soil was absorbed in just a moment, only allowing it to recover slightly. But this was already enough to delight the Spirit Queen. Long Chen summoned more and more soil, piling it up around the Life God tree. The Spirit Queen stared in shock, her hand covering her mouth. The Life God tree was crazily absorbing this soil. As endless life energy began to bloom within it, tears overflowed from the Spirit Queen's eyes. The Life God tree was the protector of the spirit world. It was the highest faith in the spirit world. As for the Spirit Queen, she was the protector of the Life God tree. Her soul was connected to it, so she knew best how quickly it was healing. The Life God tree's exhausted energy was rapidly being replenished. Nothing else could make her so happy. Thank you. The Life God tree has already recovered. The Spirit Queen's voice was choked with emotion. In just a few hours, there was not a single withered branch on the Life God tree. It was overflowing with vitality and had recovered to its peak. Don't worry about it. I can bring out as much of this soil as needed. Since we're in such a crisis, can I ask if the Life God tree can now give birth to more powerful spirit warriors? Asked Long Chen. Do you really have that much of this soil? The Spirit Queen's voice was quivering. If you really have a limitless amount, then the Life God tree can spend a large amount of life energy to give birth to spirit generals. How many can it give birth to in one day? The Spirit Queen closed her eyes. She was communicating with the Life God tree. After a moment, she said, if there is enough of this soil, the Life God tree can give birth to 10,000 spirit generals a day. What about spirit kings? No, there's no way to create spirit kings from nothing. They need to grow naturally. Spirit generals are the limit for the Life God tree, answered the Spirit Queen. Long Chen sank into thought. The spirit generals were equivalent to the soul transformation realm, and they were blessed by the Life God tree, giving them immense power. However, that still wasn't enough. Back when the heaven-devouring forest had fought against Pill Valley, even Life Star experts had died. The forest of life's power was still too low. If I can't raise our power fast enough, then I'll need to reduce the opponent's power. Long Chen smiled faintly. He thought of another soil in the primal chaos space, one that devoured life. The primal chaos space's black soil was poison to trees, and the only existence that could survive in it was the heavenly Tao tree. It would be a powerful killing tool in this upcoming battle. Long Chen asked the Spirit Queen when the Dragonblood warriors would awaken. She said that it would take over 10 days. Thinking about it, he had the Spirit Queen gather all the spirit warriors that were fighting on the battlefield. The spirit race clearly didn't understand battle tactics. Continuing like they had been would just make things worse for them. They were basically sending themselves to their enemies. Hence, it was better for them to all return to the Forest of Life and solidify their defenses. Once the spirit warriors retreated, there was no way the corrupt path or the ancient races would dare to attack the Forest of Life. According to the Spirit Queen, the Dark Forest had taken over 90% of the spirit world. Eliminating the Forest of Life was just a matter of time. The only reason the Dark Forest hadn't eliminated them was because they were using the Forest of Life as a gambling chip to cooperate with the Martial Heaven Continent's powers. If the spirit warriors retreated and took a solid defense, the experts that had come from the Martial Heaven Continent wouldn't be able to capture them. That way, there would be nothing they could do to the Forest of Life, and that would force the Dark Forest to launch an attack. However, retreating was still the best option, as it would take some time before the Dark Forest launched their attacks. That was enough time for Long Chen to do many things. Long Chen was grateful that the Spirit Queen acted according to his orders. As soon as she heard his recommendation, she used the Life God Tree's energy to alert all the spirit warriors to fall back. Because they were the fruit of the Life God Tree, there was no need for them to communicate with words. They all came from the same source, and communicating through the Life God Tree was much more convenient than through their mouths. The spirit warriors gathered, and the powerful magical beasts went to guard the border of the Forest of Life. If anyone dared to approach, they would be directly killed. After arranging this, he asked the Spirit Queen for a powerful magical beast to use as a steed, and he stealthily left the Forest of Life. He was searching for something called the World Tree. The World Tree was the most ancient tree species in the spirit world. It was the first kind of tree to exist after the spirit world was formed. First came the World Tree, then came the Forest of Life. According to the Spirit Queen, even the Life God Tree only came later. The World Tree was an extremely miraculous existence. It was said that its longevity was equivalent to this world's. As long as this world didn't die, the World Tree would exist forever. It was the existence with the greatest life energy. Originally, the spirit world had possessed a huge forest of world trees. Unfortunately, they were devoured by the Dark Forest, and there were no longer any world trees in this world. But if he was lucky, he would be able to find the seeds of the world trees. The forest where the world trees had once thrived was his target. He wanted to plant a huge forest of world trees. The primal chaos space would not allow things with their own minds to be planted within it. The branches of the tree demons or the spirit trees would simply turn into life energy when he planted them. He also tried a budding branch from the Life God Tree, but it could not be planted in the primal chaos space. Long Chen had dreamed of planting a forest of Life God Trees in the primal chaos space. Then he would possess an undying body. But that dream had been destroyed. So he had switched targets to these so-called world trees. It was said that they were also huge and possessed immense life energy. It was due to their immense life energy that they were devoured by the Dark Forest as nourishment. Because of it, the Dark Forest had strengthened to the point that they began to overpower the Forest of Life. When Long Chen heard that, Long Chen couldn't help being speechless. The Forest of Life's creatures were innately kind, but their heads. Long Chen left behind a huge amount of primal chaos soil for the Life God Tree. In any case, the primal chaos space was 3 million miles wide. He could bring out as much of this soil as he wanted. The Spirit Queen gave Long Chen a flying magical beast. It was an azure scale blood eagle, an 11th rank magical beast. Its body was covered in azure scales, but its eyes were the color of blood. The azure scale blood eagle was extremely fast, and it brought Long Chen out of the Forest of Life very quickly. Long Chen saw large swaths of spirit warriors currently retreating to the Forest of Life. Once they were out of the Forest of Life, the azure scale blood eagle sped up. In just a day, Long Chen saw a region of space rippling like it was a huge waterfall. Although he was so far away, he could still see the space there twisting. But the instant he looked closely, his hair stood on end. He sensed a terrifying pressure. This is the ancient battlefield? Long Chen was deeply shaken. Even from this distance, it gave off such a terrifying pressure. It was worthy of being a place a sovereign had once fought. Primal chaos raged in this location, and the laws of heaven and earth were constantly being torn to shreds. There was no way for this part of the world to heal. A battle from tens of thousands of years ago had left such scars even after so much time. A sovereign was truly an untouchable existence. First, get the world trees. Then I'll come back and see what I can do here. Long Chun felt a blazing desire as he looked at this distant space. Perhaps he would be able to obtain something from that place. The azure scale blood eagle continued flying. This battlefield was so huge that even with its speed, it took a full day before he saw a dark forest. Many thanks. You can go back. Long Chun jumped off quite some distance from the dark forest. He went off on his own. Magical beasts possessed powerful life auras and would be easily sensed. As soon as Long Chun entered this forest, he felt unnatural. If the forest of life was like a pure spring, then the dark forest was like muddy sewer water. He suppressed his aura, as this forest was filled with countless powerful tree demons. They were normally sleeping and looked like ordinary huge trees. But once they were woken, they would attack. He definitely didn't want to wake them, and so he carefully advanced. After 2 days, he reached a mountain valley. A smile appeared on his face. He had reached his target. The place where the two mountains met to form the valley was precisely where the forest of world trees had once been. But this mountain valley was so huge that it took him 4 hours to arrive at the end of it. He was greeted by a huge mountain. When he jumped to the crown of a tall tree and looked into the distance, he gasped. This was a cemetery for trees. Countless giant trees were lying on the ground. The trees were so huge that there was no way to see their end. The roots of tree demons were piercing them, like they were fallen trees with mushrooms growing out of them. These tree demons were many miles tall, but when compared to the fallen trees, they looked wholly insignificant. This cemetery of fallen trees gave Long Chun a chill. Although he had been prepared, he hadn't expected them to be so giant. There was no doubt that these fallen trees had to be world trees. He went over to one of the world trees. Touching the trunk, he shook his head. This world tree's life energy had already been sucked dry. The inside was completely rotten. Long Chun continued to go deeper. The world trees were hundreds of miles long, but unfortunately, even their buds were corroded and dead. There was no fruit or seed for him. He even checked the surrounding ground, but he didn't find anything. After a couple of hours, Long Chun's heart was cold. So much time had passed since these world trees had died. They didn't have the slightest trace of life within them. Even the primal chaos space couldn't revive them. Even a withered branch, as long as it possessed the slightest bit of life energy, could be revived by the primal chaos space. Unfortunately, there wasn't even the slightest bit of life here. However, Long Chun was still unwilling to leave things as they were. He expanded his search. Finding world trees was crucial to him. This damn dark forest, cursed Long Chun. He had found a fruit of the world tree. It was a 30-meter sphere with a hard shell. Yet, roots had still pierced its body and extracted all its life essence. In other words, this fruit was also garbage. In his fury, Long Chun summoned a batch of flames that incinerated these tree demons. Clearly, these tree demons had already sucked away everything from these world trees. Right now, he was hoping to find just a single seed. But he didn't feel much hope anymore. Despite how infuriated he was, he had to continue searching. Although his chances were low, he had to go through this entire forest. Just as his heart was ice cold, he saw over 10 huge trees in the distance. They couldn't be, right? Long Chun rubbed his eyes, thinking they were broken. Those giant trees were definitely world trees. Although they were withered, they hadn't collapsed. His heart began to pound. As long as they hadn't collapsed, perhaps they still possessed the slightest bit of life. Long Chun hastily rushed over. He saw that there were 18 world trees in a ring. His heart was pounding harder and harder. He saw 2 of the world trees had lots of fruit growing on them. That meant there was a very high chance they still had some life. However, just as he was rushing over, a sense of alarm washed over him. He immediately stopped. He saw a willow tree in the middle of the world trees. The willow tree was just 3,000 meters tall. In front of the world trees, it was absolutely minuscule. The main trunk of the willow was covered in scales that emitted an ancient air. Its leaves looked like the hair of a young woman. When the breeze blew by, the leaves lit up with divine light. But that light also hid a fierce killing intent that made Long Chen's hair raise. It has actually monopolized these 18 world trees. Long Chen couldn't help being shocked as he noticed the strange roots coming out of the willow. Long Chen noticed that this strange willow had 18 roots growing out of it, connecting it to the world trees like chains. It was absorbing the energy of the 18 world trees. The thing that shocked him the most was that while the willow's branches swayed gently in the wind, making it seem weak, the willow still made him feel an immense sense of danger. He stealthily approached one of the world trees from a safe angle. Making sure to stay out of view of the willow, he began to climb up a world tree like a lizard. His aura was completely hidden. As he climbed higher and higher, he eventually broke past the clouds. From here, it was even possible to see that distant battlefield. He stealthily plucked one of the world tree's seeds and tossed it into the primal chaos space. His heart was thudding loudly in his ears. The seed landed in the primal chaos bead's soil. But there was no change. Is this seed out of energy too? Long Chen couldn't help being disappointed. Usually, seeds would immediately start to germinate as soon as they were tossed into the primal chaos space. But even after a minute had passed, there wasn't the slightest movement. Just as he gave up hope, a light sound came from the seed. It slowly split apart. Roots dug their way into the ground like small tentacles. The seed split in two, revealing a small shoot. Long Chen laughed delightedly. But just as he laughed, iciness washed over him. A green branch on top of the world tree suddenly shot toward him. It was the branch of a willow with the thickness of a chopstick. Green leaves covered it, flowing with divine light. Long Chen smelled the scent of death coming for it. He directly summoned the divine ring, and 5 stars appeared in his eyes. He slashed his sword at the branch. Boom! Shockingly, his powerful attack was unable to sever that tiny branch. The world rock, and the world tree's buds and seeds began to fall. Long Chen waved his hand, collecting those seeds. Countless willow branches came out of the world tree. It was like the withered world tree had given birth to new life. But those willow branches did not belong to the world tree. In just a moment, the world tree was covered in willow branches. They shot toward Long Chen. Split the heavens four. Long Chen slashed his sword, unleashing a huge sword image. But shockingly, these willow branches were too strong, and only a small portion of them broke. The majority were completely unharmed. These willow branches looked weak, but they were extremely tough. When his attack landed, those seemingly delicate leaves would lit up and repel a large portion of his power. It was like his slash landed on cotton and couldn't cause any significant damage. Suddenly, the willow leaves lit up. A murderous aura rose as a mass of leaves shot at Long Chen. The willow leaves looked weak and light, but they possessed a terrifying destructive power as they tore through space. The willow leaves were like a sea that completely filled the world. Millions of sharp leaf blades were piercing toward him. Long Chen was appalled. He hastily summoned the green dragon battle armor and slashed his sword down again. Boom! An opening appeared in the sea of leaves, but Long Chen was only able to break the ones in front of him. The leaves surrounding him had already lacerated his body. They were so sharp that not even his dragon scales could block them. In some places, he was cut to the bone. Long Chen charged through the opening he had created. Having disturbed that strange willow below him, he had fallen into desperate straits. It was truly a case of great joy being followed by a terrible tragedy. Piercing his way out of the sea of leaves, he sucked in a cold gasp when he saw what was outside. Millions of willow branches had formed layers of nets around this region, completely trapping him. Raging flames devour the heavens. Golden flames suddenly erupted from Long Chen, enveloping the willow branches, instantly igniting them. This world became a sea of golden flames. The leaves were incinerated, but the branches were protected and blocked the heaven-incinerating flame. Boom. Although they managed to resist the heaven-incinerating flame, their defensive power sharply dropped. Long Chun slashed open a large opening for himself. Long Chun joyfully flew out. At the same time, he tossed out a flame sphere behind him. Without looking at the results, he fled. The flame sphere exploded, enveloping this region of the dark forest. Long Chun fled. He had instantly disturbed countless slumbering tree demons. He couldn't bother sneaking around any longer, and he directly summoned Hua Long, charging his way through. Those tree demons dodged his path, but Long Chun continuously tossed out flame spheres, spreading the flames. The dark forest was a complete mess. The tree demons were panicked, and some were running around, igniting other tree demons. Long Chun simply rushed away without looking back. That terrifying willow wasn't chasing him at least. That willow was too strange. He had never seen such a terrifying existence. Without the heaven-incinerating flame, he might have died. Thinking of that, he felt a burst of lingering fear. It seemed he had underestimated the dark forest. Long Chun fled away. From the air, it looked like a flame dragon was spreading a sea of flames within a forest. He quickly reached the end of the dark forest. After putting away Hua Long, lightning wings appeared on his back, and he shot away. He had only just escaped when several terrifying auras rose within the depths of the dark forest. He had clearly disturbed the dark forest's powerful existences, but he had already escaped. As for the flames he had left behind, they incinerated a large mass of trees. Those powerful experts had to personally extinguish those flames, or they would spread until the entire dark forest was gone. Long Chun continued fleeing for several hours. When he felt like he was far enough, he finally took a break. Those willow leaves are strange. Long Chun's injuries were currently bleeding a mix of blood and some black liquid. It wasn't poison. It seemed more similar to a curse that was constantly worsening his injury, making it so he couldn't heal. He was covered in injuries, and he consumed 2 healing pills to temporarily suppress them. His 108,000 stars began to circulate to assist in the healing, forcing out that bizarre energy. As the 9-star Hegemon body art circulated, more and more of that black liquid was expelled. After 2 hours, the black liquid was gone, and his injuries began to automatically heal. What strange energy! If an ordinary person was struck by one willow leaf, they would probably lose their life. Long Chun smacked his lips. Ordinary Jade Core experts would be unable to expel this curse energy. This power was even more terrifying than poison. During the battle, if a person couldn't heal their injuries and had no time to expel this curse, it would gravely affect their combat power. The thing that amazed him the most was that he hadn't even seen the willow's main body attack. It had only attacked him through the body of the world tree. If it had been the main body attacking, its power would have been even more terrifying. As for Long Chun's own attacks, they were unable to cause any substantial damage to it. But why had it not chased after him? He couldn't quite figure it out. He looked inside the primal chaos space where hundreds of world trees had started budding. But even after all this time, their shoots were only 3 meters tall. They weren't even as tall as the original seeds. They only had 2 small leaves, and their bodies were somewhat translucent, growing extremely slow. Right now, these soft shoots were too weak for him to split up into more trees. This really is too slow. Long Chun circulated the primal chaos space, urging on the growth of the world trees. But he practically couldn't see any change. Ordinary trees would grow several meters in just a few breaths' time. But considering the size of the world trees he had seen, he understood that having these soft shoots grow to such a size would definitely be a slow process. How regretful. I should have thrown in some tree demons to turn into life energy. Whether it was the bodies of magical beasts or tree demons, once they were tossed into the black soil, they would transform into life energy that would be absorbed by the plants in the primal chaos space. However, feeling regret was too late now. He definitely didn't dare to go back to the dark forest. If he encountered that willow again, it'd be troublesome. But what would be even worse was encountering those terrifying existences he had sensed just now. Other than this, His heaven-incinerating flame had been exposed. He would need to come up with some excuse to cover this up, or if he exposed that he was Long San, he would be done for. After resting and feeling like he had recovered to his peak state, he looked around and went straight toward the ancient battlefield. The ancient battlefield. It was a very vague name. This was a place where supreme experts had once fought. Back when the spirit world was still allied with the martial heaven continent, when devils had invaded the spirit world and been about to annihilate the spirit race with the intent of eliminating one of the martial heaven continent's helpers, a sovereign of the human race had led an army of experts to provide assistance. An immense battle had been fought here. The core of the battlefield was where the sovereign had fought the devils. The laws of this region had been destroyed, causing spatial cracks to constantly appear for moments. Even after tens of thousands of years, the pressure of the sovereign's fighting remained. Long Chen arrived at the edge of the battlefield where the space was constantly twisting. A powerful tearing force was present, capable of ripping steel apart. This is the power of a sovereign? The sovereign blood seal was like this, and now this battlefield is the same. Just what kind of existence is a sovereign? Wondered Long Chen as he sensed the intense fluctuations in space. He slowly walked deeper into the battlefield. The spatial twisting grew worse. A few miles in, the space beside him suddenly tore apart, and it was like a huge mouth wanting to devour him. If he didn't react fast enough and instinctively dodge, he would have been drawn into the chaotic flow of space. No matter how strong he was, he'd still die from that. His face turned pale. The danger had come so suddenly. To be killed by some random spatial tear would be too sullen of a death. He continued walking deeper, advancing slowly like he was walking through cold water. The spatial fluctuations grew more intense. Fortunately, after traveling for a while, he was able to tell that when a spatial tear was about to form, the surrounding space would turn static for a half a breath's time. By keeping watch of that pattern, he managed to effectively avoid the spatial tears. After several hours, he passed through this unsteady space. What he stepped into was a desolate battlefield filled with the stench of blood. He knelt and looked at a blood-stained stone. The blood had already dried up, but its color was as bright as if it was fresh. It also still contained some pressure. Even after all this time, it still retains this pressure. Just how terrifying was the cultivation base of the owner of this blood? Long Chen stepped on an old bone. It was 3 inches long. When he stepped on it, it didn't break. Instead, a rock beside it broke from having the bone pressed down on it. Even a random bone possesses hardness comparable to king items. Long Chen couldn't help being shocked. This bone was very strange. There were many holes in it like it was porous, and it was practically weightless when he held it. It definitely wasn't the bone of a normal human. He quickly saw a skeleton. That skeleton was 30 meters long and broken. Its head and limbs had vanished. He took a look and saw that some places showed signs that they had been broken recently. Someone must have come and taken those pieces away. This is the outer region. The good stuff must have already been taken away. I should go deeper and see if I can dredge up anything useful. Long Chen no longer had much hope for his luck. But he was quite the expert at snatching other people's treasures. Continuing forward, he once more reached a place where space was unstable. A huge abyss appeared in front of him when he exited. When he flew over the abyss, he realized it was a giant footprint. A single footprint was dozens of miles long and had broken the spatial laws around it. Even now, the spatial laws were broken as they tried to repair themselves. After crossing the abyss, a scorching air came from ahead. He quickly saw a blazing river of lava. The lava emitted fierce heat, and he saw dozens of figures roving over the lava. Those figures were from the corrupt path, the ancient races, and there were 2 people wearing the robes of the ancient family's disciples. Suddenly, one of the ancient race experts smashed a fist into the lava river. Its surface blew back, and within that opening was a fist-sized crystal. The ancient race expert snatched it. There are divine flame crystals here? Long Chen was surprised. He hadn't expected divine flame crystals to appear here, but he wasn't moved by them. According to Tyr, these divine flame crystals were just low grade. The amount of flame energy contained within them was very limited, and it wasn't very pure. He had obtained divine flame crystals as large as human heads in the Heaven Dragon Flame region, and they were definitely top grade. Even if you were to give these low-grade crystals to him, he wouldn't want them. But this wide, bottomless river of lava gave him an idea. There were quite a few people fishing for divine flame crystals here. Long Chen might not care about them, but they were extremely rare treasures to others. The divine flame crystals were hidden within the flow of lava. Fishing them out wasn't difficult. The difficult part lay in finding them. They had to send their divine sense into the lava to search for signs of the crystals, and that was very taxing to one's spiritual strength. They couldn't keep this up for too long. One of the corrupt experts smashed the lava river and smoothly took out another crystal. However, just as he took the crystal, he suddenly noticed a golden figure within the lava. He didn't see its complete body as it was covered by the lava. A treasure? The corrupt expert was delighted, and without hesitation, he summoned his heavenly Tao manifestation. He was a rank 6 celestial, and a large hand reached into the lava. Summoning his manifestation immediately drew everyone else's attention. Just what was going on? Was he attempting to gather the crystals en masse? The hand reached into the lava. It pulled out a 50-meter golden flame dragon, startling everyone. What is that? The flame dragon acted like a fish that had been happily swimming before it had been fished out. It let out a furious roar, and golden flames filled the world. Heavens, it's an earth flame spirit beast. No, this flame can incinerate heavenly Tao runes. It has to be the legendary heaven incinerating flame ranked 3rd on the earth flame rankings. A startled cry suddenly came from someone. Idiot, why would we run? This earth flame spirit beast is a priceless treasure, and it's still in a young state. We should capture it. As soon as that person said it was the heaven incinerating flame, several people's eyes turned green with greed. That was a legendary existence, something that would make flame cultivators insane with desire. Most importantly, this earth flame spirit beast had just been born, and its combat power wasn't very high. They had a high chance of subduing it. Suddenly, a miserable scream rang out. The expert who had pulled out the flame dragon was suddenly enveloped by a wave of dragon breath. He was instantly set ablaze, even his heavenly Tao runes burning. The more he resisted, the more he burned. In just a few breaths, that rank 6 celestial who had been at the mid-jade core realm was incinerated. Even his soul was burned to nothing. The others were all startled as well as delighted. That corrupt expert had used his own life to prove that this earth flame spirit beast was definitely the legendary heaven incinerating flame. It was a priceless treasure. The flame dragon was about to enter the lava river again when an expert launched an attack. A ray of light struck the flame dragon's body. This attack infuriated the flame dragon. It let out a heaven-shaking roar and attacked that person. Everyone, don't be afraid. If we attack together, using long-distance attacks, it will be helpless. We just have to exhaust it. Earth flame spirit beasts are dumb, and it won't flee. Once we exhaust its energy, we'll be able to capture it easily. The ancient race expert who had attacked it flew into the air, dodging the flame dragon's attack. He took out a bow. Just as the flame dragon chased after the ancient race expert, a corrupt expert launched a wave of sword chi. The flame dragon was struck and became infuriated. It switched targets to the corrupt expert. Seeing that the flame dragon was truly mindless, everyone relaxed slightly. They surrounded and attacked the flame dragon carefully. At the same time, they stealthily sent the call for reinforcements from their own respective parties. They knew that they would at most be able to trap this earth flame spirit beast. It was impossible for them to subdue it. The powers that had entered the spirit world all had secret communication methods so that they would be able to assist their own side if they found treasures or encountered powerful enemies. All they had to do was keep this earth flame spirit beast here. As for which power would manage to send a real expert here first to subdue it, it would be up to luck. Once the call for reinforcements went out, more and more experts began rushing over here. As for Long Chen, he was hiding in the cliff beside the lava river. He watched them attack the flame dragon like they were putting on a monkey show. That earth flame spirit beast was just one of Huolong's split bodies. Long Chen was using this split body as bait. He had exposed the heaven incinerating flame in order to get away from that terrifying willow. So he had to find a way to prove that he had obtained the heaven incinerating flame himself, and that it had nothing to do with Long San. The chance to do so had now come. In a bit, as long as he went out and subdued the flame dragon in front of everyone, he would be able to wield the heaven incinerating flame openly. Although there was some time difference, which would normally be a fatal flaw, he didn't mind. That was because there was almost no concept of time within the spirit world. And most importantly, the dark forest tree demons were truly wood-brained. It would be very difficult for them to prove anything. So this normally fatal flaw wasn't even a flaw in the dark forest. Damn, so I really got a big fish? Long Chen was calmly watching the monkey show when he got a nice surprise. He saw a familiar figure rushing over. That person was Long Chen's old friend, Gui Yan. When Gui Yan saw the flame dragon, his eyes turned green with greed. In his last defeat to Long Chen, Gui Yan's Ghost King had been destroyed. Although he had managed to use the lives of the spirit warriors to save his life, losing his Ghost King had caused his total power to drop by over 50%. He had been forced to become much more low-key. After his second defeat, he had rested for a bit before entering the ancient battlefield. He had only just entered a short time ago, and due to losing his Ghost King, he had been forced to travel carefully. As a result, he just so happened to be nearby when these corrupt experts sent the call for reinforcements, and he immediately rushed over. When he saw that flame dragon, his heart pounded wildly. The heaven incinerating flame could be exchanged for enough resources to build 3 Ghost Kings if he wanted. Once that happened, would anyone else be a match for him within the same realm? Underworld Soul Lock Curse. Gui Yan immediately began to chant a curse. His 9-flower manifestation appeared behind him, and a black chain shot out of each flower. The chain was not metal. It was condensed of heavenly Tao energy. It represented a kind of law. The 9 chains bound the flame dragon. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't escape. As for the 9 chains, they were ignited by the heaven incinerating flame, but they didn't break. "Ha, get in here." Gui Yan laughed, and his chains pulled back, drawing the flame dragon towards him. An ancient jar appeared in his hand. This jar was formed from a skull. It was unknown what level this treasure was. Just as the flame dragon was about to be pulled into the jar, a trident slammed down, and a large figure appeared. It was an ancient race expert with 2 wings and a beak instead of a mouth. His hands were like claws. Heaven and earth shook as this ancient race expert attacked Gui Yan. The 9 flowers manifest, the heavenly Tao's manifestation appeared behind him, and a sea of heavenly Tao runes raged around him. "Leave behind the heaven incinerating flame and I'll spare your life." The ancient race expert was extremely domineering, and he directly attacked, not giving a damn about Gui Yan. "Bastard, you want to break the agreement?" raged Gui Yan. He couldn't bother with the heaven incinerating flame. Blood-red runes lit up on the bone jar, and it grew larger, smashing towards the ancient race expert. Boom! The trident and jar collided, unleashing blinding light and astral winds. The other experts who had already retreated were still sent flying, coughing up blood. Heavens, they're already using ancestral items. Those experts were shocked. Was a battle really about to erupt here? Considering how enticing the heaven incinerating flame was, it seemed that whatever their agreement was, it had no power to stop them. Agreement? What a joke. We were invited by the Dark Forest. The ancient races simply need to provide assistance when the Dark Forest requests it. But right now, everyone's just searching for their own opportunities. So don't tell me a joke about how you were the first to see the treasure. The cultivation world's treasures belong to the strong, and as for you, Gui Yan, if you're smart, you'll scram right now. Otherwise, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death, sneered the ancient race expert. He once more attacked. He had to obtain the heaven incinerating flame. Boom! Gui Yan's bone jar was sent flying. This bone jar was a special item capable of refining flesh and blood, as well as souls. But it wasn't a fighting ancestral item. Gui Yen was sent flying, and the chains binding the flame dragon shattered. The flame dragon regained its freedom. Gui Yan's rage soared. If his ghost king hadn't been destroyed by Long Chen, he wouldn't be at such a disadvantage. The heaven incinerating flame is mine. The ancient race expert reached out his hand. Long Chen couldn't help sneering inside. This was just one of Hualong's split bodies. If its real body was there, it would turn him into a cooked chicken. That flame dragon was just one of Hualong's 36 split bodies. To make these people feel like they had a chance at winning, it only possessed 1/36 of Hualong's true power. That was why even the ordinary experts had dared to take the risk. After all, the heaven incinerating flame was too alluring. The trident-wielding expert's hand transformed into a huge claw image that reached towards Hualong. Yours? It's a bit early to say that. A disdainful snort rang out, and sword chi slashed down. Blinding light made everyone turn away. The attack had come from behind the ancient race expert. The ancient race expert simply snorted and swung his trident behind him without even looking. What shocked the ancient race expert was that this sword chi contained a very heavy power. His trident was actually unable to resolve the mountain-like power behind the sword chi, and he was sent flying. The most embarrassing thing was that his hand was set ablaze because he had already touched the flame dragon. Because of the sudden attack, he had to circulate his energy several times to his arm to extinguish the flames. Only a rank 9 celestial could possibly use their immense heavenly Tao energy to extinguish the heaven incinerating flame. This wasn't to say that the heaven incinerating flame wasn't strong enough, but simply that Hualong was still in the midst of growing stronger and couldn't unleash the full power of the heaven incinerating flame. Otherwise, the heaven incinerating flame wouldn't make countless people crazy for it. A man wearing a sword stepped out from the air. His appearance was extremely ordinary. Only his eyes were shocking. Sharp, golden light shot out of them, making it so others couldn't look directly at them. This man was wearing the robes of the ancient family alliance. He also had the manifestation of a rank 9 celestial behind him. You're right, treasures belong to the strong. There's no need to say anything useless. Let's use our strength to speak, said the sword-wielding man. The flame dragon didn't seem to recognize its situation, and it suddenly let out a roar. It charged at the ancient race expert. This fortune came so suddenly that even he was surprised. He quickly reached out to grab it. Although the flame dragon was sending itself to him, and he moved quickly, Gui Yen and the ancient family expert both attacked. Sword chi slashed towards him along with a bone jar. You want to block me? Keep dreaming. The ancient race expert sneered and let go of his trident. He spat a mouthful of blood onto it. The trident instantly grew larger. A vast and ancient aura seeped out of it. Not good. Seeing the ancient race expert actually sacrifice his essence blood to use his trident, Gui Yen and the ancient family expert's expression sank. Boom. Gui Yan's bone jar was sent flying, while the ancient family expert had to use his sword to block. The trident-wielding ancient race expert also suffered a recoil. He hacked up blood as he flew back. But his expression was ecstatic, as he had caught the flame dragon in one of his hands. This hand was now covered in scales, and runes sparkled on the scales. They possessed a spatial energy. The flame dragon shrank to become only a foot long in his hand, and despite how it struggled, it couldn't escape. The ancient race expert laughed delightedly. He was just about to put it away. This flame dragon's power was much lower than the golden phoenix that Long Chen had encountered back then. As long as someone possessed an ancestral item, they would be able to suppress it. Furthermore, back then, Long Chen had only been at the peak of foundation forging. It had naturally been much more difficult for him to fight the heaven incinerating flame. These experts were at the mid-jade core realm. The ancient race expert in particular was on the verge of stepping into the late jade core realm. Subduing the flame dragon wasn't that difficult for him. Gui Yen and the ancient family expert were disappointed and angered, but there was no time for them to attack again. They could only watch as he put away the flame dragon. The most hateful thing was how the ancient race expert held the flame dragon. He raised the hand holding it high into the air as if showing off his victory, mocking them. Suddenly, a strange light flashed through the air. There was no sound or change in the air. People were only vaguely able to see a minute streak of light appear. Then they were shocked to see the ancient race expert's hand fly into the air. His hand had been caught off at the wrist, and the flame dragon instantly regained its original size. It let out a heaven-shaking roar. This occurred out of nowhere, and so suddenly that no one was able to react. A figure seemed to appear out of midair. That person waved his hand, and a golden net wrapped around the flame dragon. Bloodkill Hall bastard, die. At this moment, Gui Yen, the ancient race expert, and the ancient family expert all let out furious roars and attacked. This person was also Long Chen's old friend, one of the Bloodkill Hall's top assassins, Bloodkill 9. Bloodkill 9 had instantly severed the ancient race expert's wrist and snatched the flame dragon. Seeing the three experts in front of him attack at the same time, his expression was calm. As he pulled in the golden net, a white tortoise shell appeared in front of him. It immediately grew larger and began to rapidly spin. White light shot out of it, protecting him. That bastard! Go all out and break his damn tortoise shell! Roared the ancient race expert. He once more coughed up blood onto his trident. Gui Yen and the ancient family expert both attacked. But what startled them was that when their weapons landed on the shell, some mysterious energy cancelled out their blows. Ripples appeared on the shell, but it didn't break, nor was it blown back. Just as Bloodkill 9 was about to succeed in putting away the flame dragon, a fiery red sword stabbed through his back and out his chest. Just as Bloodkill 9 was pulling in the fully trapped flame dragon and blocking the attacks of the other three with his white tortoise shell, a fiery red sword stabbed through his back, piercing out of his chest. That fiery red sword possessed terrifying power. As long as the sword's master willed it, Bloodkill 9 would be blown apart. A hand received the net. The flame dragon and the net vanished from everyone's sight. For a moment, everyone was silent. The white shell shrank and suddenly vanished. At this critical time, it abandoned its master. Gui Yen, the ancient family expert, and the ancient race expert all stared in shock at the figure behind Bloodkill 9. As soon as that sword had stabbed through his body, Bloodkill 9's life no longer belonged to himself. His expression was calm as he looked at that sword. He said, "What precise calculations? You really are suited to join my Bloodkill Hall." "Thanks, but I don't think so. I don't like being brainwashed, nor do I like being a soulless executioner." Long Chen shook his head. "You can kill me, but don't blaspheme my faith." Bloodkill 9's voice contained some fury. "I have no interest in blaspheming your faith. I'm not so bored. Do you still remember what I said in front of the Shantian Dao sect? Since you view death as returning to the embrace of your killing god, I'll send you to see him. I'll do it now, but don't worry, you aren't the first, and you won't be the last," said Long Chen indifferently. He didn't feel the slightest sympathy for the Bloodkill Hall's assassins. He scoffed at these extremist believers. They thought that everyone in this world had sins, and so killing those sinners was simply right. There was no need to even mention the enmity between the Bloodkill Hall and himself. Their enmity had reached the point of no rest until death, so Long Chen naturally wouldn't be merciful. "I just have one request. Can you let me die in a more dignified way? After all, I stand at the peak of my craft," sighed Bloodkill 9. "No. Let me ask you, how many people have you killed? Did you ever think about their feelings when you killed them? When you cut off their heads, did you ever think of leaving them some dignity?" Long Chen scoffed at this. Bloodkill 9 clearly wanted a chance to commit suicide, but Long Chen wouldn't let him. "That's different. They're sinners," raged Bloodkill 9. "Sinners? Who determined their sins? Your so-called killing god? You're just scum that stands at a slightly higher position and criticizes other people's morals. You think you can stand in the same position as your god and look down on others, telling people they should die and then killing them? When I reach the same height as your killing god, I'll call your killing god a sinner and kill him as well," said Long Chen disdainfully. Bastard, you dare to blaspheme a god? You dash, it's about time for you to get going. Tell your crap to your god. Long Chen unleashed his power through his sword, and lightning runes lit up. Bloodkill 9 was blown to pieces, and the Thunder Force destroyed his soul as well. Bloodkill 9 died without a corpse. Let alone dying with some dignity, he died without leaving anything behind. Killing a rank 9 celestial really is difficult. Long Chen swung his sword, sighing emotionally. This was his third encounter with Bloodkill 9. Now, he had finally killed him, but a large part of that was also due to luck. If it had been a head-on fight, killing Bloodkill 9 would have been supremely difficult. That shell ancestral item of his was too strange. Thank you all for your offering. I will kindly accept this heaven-incinerating flame. You can leave now. Long Chen smiled. Starting today, he would be able to openly use his heaven-incinerating flame. Long Chen, I've heard of your name. But if you think killing an assassin means you can be arrogant, you're wrong, said the ancient family expert coldly. Gui Yen, the ancient race expert, and the ancient family expert surrounded Long Chen. That wasn't just because he had the heaven-incinerating flame. Long Chen was the mortal enemy of their three powers. There was no need to say anything about the corrupt path and the ancient races. But as for the ancient family alliance, originally there hadn't been much enmity between them. Their enmity had grown strong when Long Chen had killed Luo Minghe. Killing a top genius of the ancient family alliance was a huge slap in their faces. Although they didn't make any moves on the surface, they had secretly begun making their preparations. Now that they saw him, even Gui Yen thought that this was an extremely good chance to kill Long Chen. By working together, the three of them should have a high chance of killing him. Although Long Chen had just killed Bloodkill 9, that had just been a sneak attack. The fact that he had managed to kill him was also thanks to the three of them. Without the flame dragon drawing attention, without the three of them attacking, without the whole constructed situation, Long Chen wouldn't have been able to kill Bloodkill 9 in one attack. That kind of perfect sneak attack couldn't be replicated. In other words, it was just a coincidence, so the three of them were not afraid at all. On the contrary, their battle-intent soared. Long Chen looked at the ancient family alliance's expert with a sword sheathed on his back and the light shooting out of his eyes. He indifferently said, "Don't think that I'm fooled by your act. You are not a sword cultivator, so that little play of yours is useless on me. I want to ask, why is that you want to target me when that fellow Emon Yen has already caused a huge uproar in your ancient family alliance and you're not even able to handle him?" In truth, Long Chen was just saying this to see if he could dredge up some information about Emon Yen's whereabouts. And as expected, as soon as he mentioned Emon Yen, this expert's expression became extremely unsightly. It was like flames were about to shoot from his eyes. Emon Yen's nothing. The Emo family is scum that was kicked out of the ancient family alliance. As for Emon Yen, he only knows how to do shameless, shady business. If he was a real man, he would have come out and fought openly. Ha, what a joke. Your entire ancient family alliance is unable to do a single thing to Emon Yen. Unable to capture him, you mock him for running, sneered Long Chen. Long Chen relaxed inside. It seemed Emon Yen had had some kind of fortuitous encounter that allowed his cultivation base to advance rapidly. Just from this fellow's furious expression, it was clear that Emon Yen had done something to infuriate the entire ancient family alliance. To be able to survive after infuriating the entire ancient family alliance meant that Emon Yen was definitely remarkable. When Long Chen thought about it, he supposed that was only natural. That fellow might put on a heroic appearance, but in truth, he was a scoundrel filled with evil thoughts. Emon Yen is brute, a half-breed human scum. He didn't dare to face us, so he dug up the graves of our ancestors. What kind of human would do something like that? Roared the ancient family expert, his eyes starting to turn red. From that, Long Chen guessed that his ancestor's grave had also been dug up by Emon Yen. Long Chen couldn't help being dumbfounded. That little fellow Emon Yen had executed such a stimulating and irritating plot. Long Chen himself had never thought of something like that, so he prostrated himself in admiration to Emon Yen. On the other side of the coin, Long Chen knew what kind of person Emon Yen was. He knew how to act as a person, and unless the other side had done something extremely heinous, he wouldn't do something so immoral. Since he had, it meant that they had been even more immoral. To uphold justice, Emon Yen dug up their ancestors' graves. This was their punishment for not properly raising their descendants. Cough, let me express my sympathy for what you've encountered. I offer my most sincere respect for your ancestors. I hope you can get through your grief. You shouldn't feel bad. Going out and soaking in the sunshine isn't a bad thing. It's very good for bone development. Die. The ancient family expert couldn't hold back any longer, and he attacked, his sword slashing toward Long Chen. His power was instantly raised to its peak, and Long Chen felt the space around him solidify. This was not a feeling. The space was truly frozen. I said that your sword was just a fake. You're actually an earth cultivator. You draw other people's attention with your sword and then use a spatial force field to lock them down. If all goes according to the plan, you will then kill them in one blow. But do you think other people are children? Long Chen sneered and his divine ring appeared, shattering the space around like glass. 5 stars appeared in his eyes, and his sword met the ancient family expert's sword. What surprised others was that when they clashed, there was no eruption of power. Just at this moment, a trident whistled over toward Long Chen's waist. The trident-wielding ancient race expert's manifestation was in full bloom. Heavenly Tao energy raged around him, boosting the power of his trident. Boom! Long Chen first blocked the attack of the ancient family expert, and then his sword slashed towards the ancient race expert's trident. People were shocked to see this. According to reason, having already blocked the ancient family expert's sword, his sword shouldn't have enough power to immediately block the trident. But when the sword and trident met, blinding light erupted. The ancient race expert let out a muffled snort and was blown back. Long Chen spun, smashing his fist behind him. Gui Yan's bone jar was also blown back. In an instant he forced back 3 peak experts. The distant spectators were all shocked. Is Long Chen trying to defy the heavens? First he killed Bloodkill 9 in one blow, and now he's even able to hold his own against the 3 of them. Those 3 were rank 9 celestials. They were at the peak of all celestials. When they used their manifestations, rank 8 celestials and below would only be able to submit. In fact, under the pressure of all 3 of their manifestations, even a rank 9 celestial would be hard-pressed. And yet, Long Chen's divine ring was completely forcing back the might of the heavenly Taos. With this divine ring, heaven and earth couldn't bind him. I already said that your little trick was useless in front of me. Now do you believe me? Asked Long Chen indifferently. You borrowed my power? Raged the ancient family expert. You merged the heaviness of earth with the agility of the sword. This kind of thinking isn't bad, but with your brains, there's no way you would be able to truly create something like that. Although it looks like you now possess great offense and defense, as if you can switch between heaviness and lightness at will, the truth is that when you switch, your power leaks out, and you're basically giving it to your opponent. This world is full of people who think themselves clever. But I'm sure that if you weren't from the ancient family alliance, you'd have long since lost your life. Long Chen shook his head. He was an earth cultivator who, instead of using a heavy weapon, decided to take an alternative path. Unless he was truly a peerless genius, such an unorthodox style would only cause his combat power to drop. And this person was not a person capable of blazing such an alternative path. Bullshit. Who do you think you are? You couldn't possibly understand the principles between blending yin and yang. Roared the ancient race expert, unable to accept that Long Chen would scoff at this self-created style. The ground exploded, and a 300-meter earth giant appeared. The earth giant's runes revolved around it, and it became the same color as stone, and then gradually became a golden color. Heavy Earth Slash. Having summoned this golden giant, the ancient race expert attacked again. The giant's golden sword slashed towards Long Chen. The golden sword whistled towards Long Chen, cutting apart space like it was a screen of water. Long Chen snorted, but he suddenly felt the space around him solidify. His expression changed slightly as the ground beneath him suddenly sank. Idiot, this is the gravity domain of my golden battle general. All your movements will be slowed down here. The ancient family expert sneered at Long Chen from his golden giant's head. Boom. The golden sword slammed down where Long Chen was. But everyone was shocked to find that there was no explosion. Instead, the ground sank once more, and even the river of lava was cut off. The ground in a 1,000-mile diameter had turned a golden color. The golden giant seemed to be one with the entire earth. This level of gravity can't threaten me. This little bit of power is simply insufficient. Long Chen suddenly slashed his way out of the ground. The golden giant was knocked back several steps, and spiderweb-like cracks spread. With the final step, the ground crumbled. It was already over a mile away from its original location. The golden giant was huge, while a human was tiny in comparison, but the golden giant actually wasn't a match for Long Chen in power. Heavy earth burial. The golden giant itself suddenly let out a roar, and it stabbed its sword into the ground. It quickly disappeared into the ground. The ground suddenly shook and subsided. The ground around Long Chen suddenly began to wrap around him like a hand trying to crush him. It was like the entire ground was being controlled, as if the very ground was the ancient family expert's weapon. Long Chen couldn't help being startled. He had never seen such a huge-scale attack. 1,000 miles of earth had instantly enveloped him. A bad feeling rose in his heart, and he hastily flew up, wanting to escape the ground. Stay behind! Gui Yan and the ancient race expert attacked. Gui Yan's bone jar had the faces of ghosts appear on it, and wailing came from them. Blood-red chains formed a huge net that blocked Long Chen's path. Long Chen snorted and slashed his sword. But these chains were exceptionally tough. His attack only cut a small nick in the net. Just as he was preparing to go through that nick, a trident smashed towards him. Die! Sneered the ancient race expert. Boom! Long Chen slashed out his sword, but as a result, he was blown back into the ground. The ground quickly sealed above him. At this moment, everyone realized it had become a huge coffin. The coffin had devoured Long Chen like a monster. It then began to shrink. In just an instant, it was only several thousand meters wide. As it shrank, the runes on it grew more concentrated, and the pressure grew greater. Long Chen, dying to my ultimate move should make you happy. The ancient family expert smiled coldly. He formed hand seals, causing the coffin to continue shrinking. This was his ultimate move. Once devoured by the coffin, it would shrink and the pressure would increase until you were crushed to powder. Furthermore, the coffin contained the pressure of the heavenly Daos as well. Even a life-star expert would be unable to resist unless they were also a rank 9 celestial. As the coffin continued shrinking and the pressure increased, the ancient race expert's expression suddenly changed. If Long Chen is killed like this, what about the heaven-incinerating flame? With his reminder, Gui Yan and the ancient family expert were startled. If Long Chen destroyed the heaven-incinerating flame in his death, they would have lost a treasure. Split the heavens 5. Just as they were hesitating about whether or not they should speak to Long Chen and force him to hand over the heaven-incinerating flame, a roar came from within the 300-meter coffin. A crescent moon sword image slashed out and towards the three of them. The three of them were shocked, and all used their strongest moves to block. The ancient race expert and Gui Yan were the most immoral. As they blocked, they immediately retreated. The ancient family expert's golden giant ended up becoming their sacrificial shield. It was instantly blown apart. The coffin split in two and fell to the ground, revealing Long Chen. He looked like a death god that had just crawled out of hell, and his eyes shone coldly. That coffin had truly been powerful. If he had allowed it to continue compressing, it would have been dangerous. He supposed this was to be expected. Each rank 9 celestial was powerful and had their powerful trump cards. I'll send you on your way. Long Chen stepped forward, appeared in front of the ancient family expert in an instant. The ancient family expert's expression changed. He was pale, as the destruction of his golden giant had caused a backlash to his soul. An injury to the soul couldn't be healed with heavenly Tao energy. For Long Chen to choose him as his first target, he couldn't help cursing. Long Chen was launching a vicious killing blow right at the start. He retreated as fast as he could, and he summoned an earthen armor, but Long Chen's sword still severed his arm. Letting out a pain groan, he slammed his remaining hand on the ground, and a pillar shot out, carrying him into the air rapidly. That was actually normally an attack move, but now he used it as an escape move. He was sent into the sky in an instant, and so suddenly that Long Chen wasn't able to stop him. The ancient race expert was already charging at him, trying to win time for his ally. Although he had severed one of his arms, a rank 9 celestial would instantly heal such an injury. Boom! Long Chen's sword slashed into the trident. But in that instant, Long Chen's body became covered in green dragon scales. His power erupted like a volcano. The ground shattered, and rubble flew into the air. A huge hole appeared in the ground, and a wave of earth crazily spread. The ancient race expert violently coughed up blood, caught off guard by Long Chen's sudden increase in power. His arms were deformed. Something's up. He's intentionally holding back his power, cried the ancient race expert. Seeing Long Chen's sword coming for him again, he roared, "Spirit blood ignition." Blood runes covered his body, and a wild aura rose. The ancient race expert's blood chi erupted, and the trident suddenly let out an ominous roar as if it had come to life. Boom! Long Chen's sword landed once more. The trident-wielding ancient race expert forcibly received this attack and used Long Chen's power to shoot away. The runes on his wings lit up, and he transformed into a ray of light that disappeared over the horizon. The distant spectators were all shocked to see him flee. They couldn't understand what had happened. The three of them had clearly suppressed Long Chen, so how had things turned around in the blink of an eye? The ancient race expert had been covered in blood, and his body had been covered in cracks when he had fled. He had been about to die. Long Chen hadn't expected the ancient race expert to pull out such a powerful trump card. In the instant when his blood chi erupted, his combat power multiplied by several times. His trident had caused Long Chen's arms to turn numb. Seeing that the ancient race expert had fled, Long Chen turned toward the ancient family alliance expert. But as soon as he started to move, the ground erupted, and earthen walls appeared like high mountains, blocking his path. Long Chen slashed his sword, breaking the earthen walls. But when he looked around, he found that his target had vanished. A quick survey revealed that Gui Yan had also vanished at some unknown time. Perhaps he had been the first to flee. In the end, I still got nothing, sighed Long Chen. The Eastern Wasteland Bell had said that without absolute power, it was very difficult to kill heavenly geniuses who were in possession of copious karmic luck. A situation like his sneak attack against Bloodkill 9 was very rare. Of course, Long Chen had known from the start that fighting 1 against 3, it would be very difficult for him to kill any of them. He hadn't been willing to accept that, and so he had wanted to see if he could kill 1 or 2. But he ended up empty-handed. In truth, if he had wanted to kill Gui Yan's life would have most likely been lost here. But he hadn't wanted to kill him, or he would have released him for nothing last time. Right now, Long Chen estimated that in a one-on-one or in a sneak attack situation, his chances of killing a rank 9 celestial were still decent. But in a group fight, he would just be wasting energy. Unless he could fully condense the Divine Gate Star, it would be very difficult to counter the karmic luck acting behind the scenes. However, despite how he consumed pills like his life depended on it, the Divine Gate Star was still improving very slowly. There was an extremely large distance between its current state and its peak state. Long Chen looked around. The other people had already fled. The lava river that had been blocked had found a new path and was once more flowing. I suppose it wasn't a complete waste. Now I'll be able to use Huo Long openly. Long Chen didn't care if others spread this news or not. In any case, he had recorded his own scene of him capturing the flame dragon. If anyone dared to frame him as being Master Long San, he would take out the photographic jade and slap them in the face. I'm really not used to wielding a sword. It's too light, and I can't use my real power. Long Chen looked at his sword and shook his head. This sword was something he had snatched away in the Heaven Dragon Flame region. He didn't have any better weapons, so he was forced to use it. Although the sword was also an ancestral item, it wasn't a good fit for him. It was a sword for flame cultivators, and he wasn't a real flame cultivator. Tidying up his thoughts, Long Chen left this region, continuing deeper into the ancient battlefield. He quickly reached another region of violent and chaotic space. This time, the spatial fluctuations were even more intense. Long Chen sensed two different laws clashing. Space was booming, and it was like the roaring of 10,000 beasts. When he entered this chaotic space, he felt like a fish trying to swim through a turbulent current. Spatial energy was constantly pulling at him, and he almost wasn't able to bear it. Damn, so this is the result of a clash between two supreme magical arts. Even after this many years, the heavenly Tao left behind by these two experts is still clashing. Long Chen was shocked. I wonder if I could learn it? Long Chen suddenly had an extremely brazen thought. Looking around, he decided to have Lei Long come and protect him. The current Lei Long was no longer its old self. Unlike Huolong, Long Chen hadn't been constantly interrupting it. By absorbing the lightning chain's energy, Lei Long's power had crazily risen during this time. Its power was no weaker than Huolong's now. With Lei Long's protection, Long Chen could safely attempt to immerse himself in the clashing energy in the air. He sat lotus-style on the ground and slowly circulated the 9-star Hegemon body art. His divine ring appeared behind him. His eyes were closed as he entered a state of emptiness. Long Chen seemed to be in a dream. As the 9-star Hegemon body art circulated, he was transported through the river of time. The roaring of magical beasts and devil creatures rang out in his ears. When he heard those voices, his heart shook ever so slightly, causing the sound to intensify. Long Chen knew this was a result of his distraction, and taking a breath, he completely relaxed his heart. The roaring grew louder once more. With his experience from last time, he didn't try to guess what the origins of those voices were. Right now, he was willing this empty state of mind to grasp some of the remnants of the ancient battle that had been fought here. Originally, he had just been testing an extremely brazen thought. This kind of thinking was completely crazy. The only reason why he was trying it was because he was experimenting with the 9-star Hegemon body art. He hadn't expected to see some hope of success from this test. But right now, he couldn't think about that. He had to take the attitude of an indifferent spectator. Not trying to see nor hear anything, he could only let it come naturally. The voices grew clearer. He heard the sounds of weapons whistling through the air. He heard the wails of strange beasts. He also heard the sound of sharp blades piercing flesh. But he still maintained this steady state of mind. These were scars left behind from that ancient time. They had been imprinted in the heavenly Daos, and the 9-star Hegemon body art was currently seizing them. Once the imprint was seized, it would vanish. Once he grasped it, it would cease to exist. So this kind of opportunity would only come once. If he missed it, there would be no do-overs. He listened to the voices, but he didn't pay any meticulous attention to any of them. A blurry scene appeared before his eyes, but he still couldn't look. In fact, he intentionally didn't look for fear of being attracted by anything he saw. The slightest disturbance in his mind would cause all this to vanish. The scene slowly grew clearer. Long Chen had gotten used to this state, and he began to look at the battle. Countless strange creatures were present. There were beasts that looked like apes but had lizard-like tails. Some were like leopards, but they had 3 heads and a pair of wings. There were also human-shaped creatures. They had a pair of bat-like wings and 2 horns coming out of their heads. They had fangs protruding out of their mouths, and their bodies were covered in scales. Those are devil creatures. Long Chen recognized those creatures from their appearance. As the scene grew clearer, he began to sense those creatures' auras. That further proved that his guess was correct. One of the devil creatures charged right at him. Its clawed hand stabbed through his head, but he still didn't move. Black blood splashed. A ray of sword chi slashed through the air, killing the devil creature. Long Chen was shocked to find that these devil creatures were practically all on the level of 11th rank magical beasts. But this one ray of sword chi killed hundreds and thousands of them. He didn't dare to look at the master of this sword. He had to maintain a steady state of mind. He couldn't be drawn in by any details. The army of devil beasts collapsed, and he finally saw an army of human experts slaughtering their way through them. The shocking thing was that these human experts all had 9 flowers revolving behind them. They were all rank 9 celestials. Long Chen sat on the ground, not moving. He could now feel his own existence in this world. He was sitting in the middle of the battlefield like a specter, calmly watching the battle. Suddenly, roaring shook the sky. The sky split open as a huge claw descended from above the clouds. The claw was like a mountain. The world shook as it fell. Those human experts were appalled and attacked it with full power. Yet that claw still fell, destroying the land. Those powerful human experts were all killed by this one claw. Not even one survived. Long Chen couldn't help being shocked. What kind of monster was that? How could it be so huge? The world couldn't even fit it. Just a single claw from it was able to kill so many human experts. The claw rose from the ground, and a burst of lava flew into the air, forming a river. Was this the origin of the lava river? Long Chen instantly thought of the lava river that still existed here. The sky began to crumble. It was like the world couldn't bear the power contained in the claw and was about to explode. This was different from its first attack. Divine light was erupting from the claw, and divine runes spread. This time, the power was even more terrifying than its first attack. Just as it felt like the world would crumble from this attack, a golden light shot out. Long Chen couldn't see what that light was. However, when it smashed into the claw, the entire world crumbled away. Long Chen seemed to hear the sound of a star exploding, but then everything vanished. His eyes flew open and he took a deep breath. His back was covered in cold sweat, and he was involuntarily shivering. The instant those two powers had collided, he had felt like his soul would be torn apart. It was like that power was so terrifying that it was impossible to bear witness to it even through the river of time. One attack caused heaven and earth to crumble. One attack caused stars to explode. Just what kind of terrifying power was that? It had completely surpassed his imagination. That level is too high. There's no way for me to even touch something like that. I should switch locations. Long Chen shook his head and left. Boom. An endless sea of lightning filled heaven and earth, drowning countless devil creatures. An expert covered in lightning rampaged through their midst, slaughtering the devil creatures. That person's appearance was blurry. He seemed like a human-shaped bolt of lightning. The weapons in his hands were also formed of lightning and could constantly transform. They were completely invincible. In just an incense stick's worth of time, that expert slaughtered all the devil creatures, leaving behind a mountain of corpses. Space exploded, and the world turned dark. Some kind of energy caused Long Chen's scrying to come to a sudden stop. This was Long Chen's 7th time using the 9-star Hegemon body art to go back in the flow of time and peer into that ancient battle. But he didn't gain anything with his first 6 attempts. Whatever he saw was far too profound for him to even attempt understanding, or there hadn't been enough time for him to see anything before his vision was cut short. This chaotic domain had countless battle scars that were imprinted in the heavenly Daos. They were random and without order. There was no way to find any pattern to them. Long Chen didn't gain anything, but because of his continuous attempts at peering into the mysteries of the past, he was receiving a backlash, made worse by the terrifying eruptions of power from that battle. His soul was aching. But this ended up provoking Long Chen's stubborn nature. The more he couldn't obtain something, the more he wanted it. As a result, on his 7th try, at this 7th location, Long Chen received a delightful surprise. That senior definitely had a legendary lightning spirit body. His entire body was practically completely transformed into lightning, and he had no more flesh and blood. How terrifying! Long Chen was full of admiration. That person had actually abandoned their own flesh and blood body to become an incarnation of lightning. Just how much bravery did that require? Or was it simply craziness? Long Chen quickly recorded the shape of the runes, as well as how this technique circulated one's energy. He then transferred all this to Lei Long. What delighted him was that Lei Long instantly comprehended what he transferred to it, and it actually became able to use the lightning art. Long Chen was wild with joy. While that senior had possessed a lightning spirit body, he had still been a human. But Lei Long was a spiritual body composed of heavenly tribulation lightning. For Lei Long, controlling lightning runes was as easy as a person controlling their limbs. To Lei Long, this kind of high-level art was just a slightly more difficult movement. It learned it in just a bit, and it would simply need some time to train in it before it was mastered. However, Lei Long also needed Long Chen's power. It needed the support of Long Chen's spiritual yuan to bring out the full power of this magical art. Originally, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to comprehend much of this person's lightning arts. Even comprehending a third of them would require a huge amount of time and energy. But now that he tested teaching Lei Long, he realized that this wasn't even a problem. Lei Long, you absorb the lightning chains while studying these lightning arts. When you figure things out, teach them to me. This is very important to me. Long Chen gave this mission to Lei Long. Once Lei Long fully comprehended these lightning arts, considering their mental and spiritual connection, it wouldn't be long before Long Chen could learn them as well. After obtaining these lightning arts, Long Chen didn't bother wasting any more time. These ancient techniques were too difficult to obtain, and also too difficult to comprehend. He didn't have that much time to waste. Long Chen killed one of the ancient family alliance's disciples, and he learned some information that wasn't behind restrictions. First of all, it was now confirmed for him that Emon Yen was fine. Furthermore, his life was very lively recently. He continuously appeared out of nowhere, causing an uproar in the ancient family alliance. He also learned some information about what Emon Yen had done. In just the past year, he had killed over 1,000 geniuses of the ancient family alliance. He had defeated 9 rank 9 celestials, killing 3 of them. He had dug up 1,306 ancestral graves within the ancient family alliance. He had plundered their resources hundreds of times. Many of the ancient families had had every last bit of their wealth plundered. When he thought of that, Long Chen's expression became odd. Could it be that he had been infected by that fellow? He had also plundered Pill Valley. He lamented inside that, as one would expect, ink-stained. Emon Yen's surname, Emo, meant ink, and now it seemed he had been turned black by Emon Yen as well. Long Chen suddenly felt that before he had met Emon Yen, he had been an extremely kind and sunshiny youth. Other than learning about Emon Yen, he also learned why the Dark Forest had gathered the powers. Their reasoning wasn't that off from what Long Chen had expected. The Dark Forest was using the ancient battlefield and the Forest of Life as bargaining chips to work together with them. Their goal was to hold Pill Valley in check. In truth, Long Chen was speechless towards their foolishness. Ever since Pill Valley and the powers other than the righteous path had accepted the heaven-devouring forest taking root in the martial heaven continent, the various powers had obtained countless benefits from the spirit world. The Forest of Life and the ancient battlefield had essentially become trial regions for them to temper their disciples. But did the Dark Forest really think that just that would be enough for these powers to unite with them against Pill Valley? That was just a fantasy. Medicinal pills were the lifeblood of cultivators. What power would turn against Pill Valley? The disciple he had killed didn't know many of the details, but Long Chen trusted that the various powers all thought the Dark Forest was a group of idiots. They would just take advantage while they could. If the Dark Forest really started a war with Pill Valley, they would just try to smooth things over. In any case, they just had to take care to not offend either side. Long Chen clearly saw through thoughts. This time, in order to express their sincerity, the Dark Forest didn't restrict the number of people allowed into the spirit world, and had set up an entrance to the spirit world that allowed the corrupt path to kill any adventurers from the martial heaven continent. Through his soul search, he also obtained a map of the ancient battlefield. Only now did he realize the ancient battlefield had safe passageways that allowed a person to avoid the spatial cracks. Realizing this, Long Chen started to sweat. After scheming all day, all that happened was that he became dumber. If he had accidentally been devoured by a spatial crack, he'd have nowhere to cry. With the map, Long Chen found that the ancient battlefield was a long strip. At the end of it was a region that was said to be where a sovereign had fought. There were countless treasures there, and there was even a chance to comprehend what the sovereign had left behind. The most alluring thing was that rumor was that the sovereign had killed a top devil expert and had sealed their divine weapon there. Anyone who obtained it would obtain that devil expert's inheritance and gain a power rivaling a sovereign. This is mine. That's mine too. This is all mine. Long Chen's eyes blazed with greed as he looked over the map. He couldn't believe he had wasted so much time in this outer region. He charged directly to the core. With the map, his progress was rapid. He constantly made turns, avoiding the chaotic regions. When he passed a particularly huge chaotic region, a divine pressure appeared, one that invoked reverence and worship. Yes, this is the pressure of a sovereign. It's just like the sovereign blood seal. But their auras aren't the same. They're two different generations of sovereigns, thought Long Chen. This region in front of him was a boundless, desolate world of chaotic space. The space here was like a mirage. The scene was constantly changing. The sky collapsed, the stars vanished. Mountains and plains became nothing. In front of this power, the world couldn't remain stable. It was like the world had died in this region. But when he carefully focused himself, what he saw in front of him was simply mist. It was impossible to see through this mist. Gods, devils, immortals, all sorts of images would flit through this space. It felt possible to hear a Grandao's music, yet that music also sounded like the wailing of ghosts. This is where a sovereign once fought? Let me try sensing it again. Long Chen clenched his fists, a heroic feeling rising in his heart. A sovereign was an existence that stood at the peak of the marital path. They were unrivaled, completely suppressing everyone else in their generation. No one could contend against them. Everyone had to respect a sovereign. If it hadn't been for the sovereigns, the martial heaven continent would no longer exist. They had been the protective gods of this world. Thinking of how he was standing on the battlefield that a sovereign had once fought on, Long Chen couldn't help feeling excited. He entered the mist. This was a world of both illusion and reality. With each step he took, reality changed. With one step, lightning rang in the air and a torrent of rain fell. With another step, a gentle breeze blew by in the sunlight, the fragrance of flowers and birdsong in the air. As he advanced, reality continued to change. Immortals descended from the heavens, ghosts demanded his life, the sun, the moon, the stars all changed. The transformations continued. He felt like he was in a world where space-time was in chaos. The power of a sovereign is capable of breaking the laws of heaven and earth. Could it be that the real ability of a sovereign is to change the laws of the world? Wondered Long Chen. This chaotic space was actually extremely hard for him to endure. As he walked, it was like he suddenly went from walking on the ground to walking up a wall, and then he suddenly felt like he was upside down. Space and time were in chaos here. This was different from the clashes of laws he had felt before. There were no spatial cracks here. That was because the power here had reached the level that it formed a resonance with the world instead of simply cracking it. However, the two powers that were present were not harmonious, resulting in this chaotic region. Everything was in chaos here. Even the laws of heaven and earth were thrown into chaos. How could I possibly go back and sense anything from that time? Long Chen couldn't even muster up the bravery of circulating the 9-star He-Gem body art to try and see the sovereign's battle. He was afraid that kind of power could easily exterminate him even through the river of time. More importantly, this chaotic space meant he couldn't do it even if he wanted to. This chaotic space was a complete mess with no start or end. If the previous regions were like balls of wool where he could follow one thread down to the past, this was a sea of turbid water. Trying to sense anything was nonsense. As he advanced deeper, he grew dizzy and lightheaded. At some unknown time, the chaotic space became still. For some unknown reason, he entered a barren land. Within this barren land was a seductive figure that caused Long Chen's expression to change. You can also listen on Wuxia World. Slender legs, bursting curves, a thin waist and long billowing hair, a figure of such pinnacle beauty would enrapture every man with just a look. This kind of figure wasn't something a human should be able to possess. Her proportions were so perfect it was like a god had carved her body meticulously. This was a beauty and perfection that shouldn't exist. At first, Long Chen was hopeful that it wasn't her. But when he saw that bone sword on her back, his heart plummeted to the depths. Long Chen's appearance also startled her. She slowly turned, revealing her beauty that was perfect down to the last detail. Even each hair of her eyebrows was perfectly matched. When she saw Long Chen, her ocean blue eyes lit up. They were like sapphires reflecting the moonlight. The sight of her was dazzling. Long Chen's heart pounded. He unconsciously took out his sword and retreated half a step. It was like this half a step's distance could make him feel slightly safer. She smiled. Her lips curled slightly, and her eyes were also smiling. This smile could topple a nation, but it gave Long Chen goosebumps. "Are you afraid of me?" Lung Yuan's cherry lips opened, her voice like the song of an oriole. But for some reason, each word and syllable contained bone-chilling killing intent. It was like Lung Yuan had become one with killing and slaughter. Each breath, each blink of an eye, each one of her movements could be the premonition of a slaughter. Long Chen had never expected to run into this killing goddess here. What alarmed him the most was that this killing goddess's cultivation base had reached the late Jade Core realm. If it was just her cultivation base that had increased, that would be one thing. But with his sharp senses from the 9-star Hegemon body art, Long Chen also sensed a strong mortal danger. "How could I feel afraid? We're old friends. It wouldn't be suitable to describe what I'm feeling as fear." Long Chen forced out a laugh. He very much wanted to say that he wasn't the slightest bit afraid. These goosebumps were from the cold. Long Chen grumbled inside. It could be said that his cultivation speed had been quite fast recently. His power was soaring rapidly with each passing day, and he had thrown his peers far into the distance. However, this dangerous person in front of him had not only thrown him in the dust when it came to cultivation base, but her actual power had also grown explosively. Ever since leaving Pill Valley, Long Chen spent each day consuming medicinal pills. But his cultivation base was only at the 3rd heaven stage of Jade Core. "As old friends, don't you think we should hug to express our feelings?" Lung Yuan's sapphire eyes seemed to see right through Long Chen's heart. Damn it, she had her void-piercing eyes. "She can see right through my thoughts." Long Chen immediately recalled the strange power of her eyes. He knew that all his thoughts were being read by her. As a result, he became much more relaxed and smiled. "I wouldn't dare to hug such a beautiful woman. A certain jealous somebody would beat me." Long Chen threw caution to the wind. The worst case was that they would fight. How could he be afraid of such a thing? "I've been watching you. You're getting stronger quite quickly, but you have too many things holding you back. They're restricting your cultivation speed. The people by your side will one day cause your death." Lung Yuan shook her head. Long Chen swung his sword, unleashing a blast of wind that blew back Lung Yuan's hair. But she didn't even blink. She just stared expressionlessly at him. "I'm not like you. I have my brothers and sisters. They aren't a burden. They are what allow me to continue forward and get stronger. Don't try to judge me according to your standards, and don't try to judge my brothers and sisters. You are not me." Long Chen's expression was dark with a fury that he didn't bother concealing. He was different from Lung Yuan. Lung Yuan was always alone. She had no distractions, so her cultivation base rapidly advanced. Yet, for Long Chen, when he wanted to advance, it was different. It was just like the Divine Gate Star. As the Divine Gate Star advanced, it raised the other stars with it, making it slower. For Long Chen, he had to bring up the Dragon Blood Legion as he advanced. So in Lung Yuan's view, his actions were very foolish. If a genius dragged up a pile of garbage with them, they would turn into garbage as well. It would be a waste of talent. However, Long Chen had never thought that. Each warrior in the Dragon Blood Legion was his brother. They wouldn't hesitate to die for him, and in the same vein he would put his life on the line to protect them. Perhaps only the Dragon Blood Legion could comprehend this kind of feeling. Let alone Leng Yuan, who came from the corrupt path. Even the righteous path's people would scoff at them. Although Leng Yuan's tone was very flat and she didn't express any disdain, Long Chen was still unable to accept her words. I really am unable to understand. You sacrifice so much for them. Just what are you hoping to obtain? Asked Leng Yuan. If someone else asked me this, I'd scoff at them. But to you, I can only express my sympathy. Oh. Leng Yuan raised her brows slightly. In truth, you're very pitiable. Your closest companion died to your own hands, and starting then, you locked your emotions inside. You've already forgotten what trust is, what sacrifice is, what depending on others is. When there is a true bond between people, they don't bother thinking about what they can get in return. This kind of bond can make you feel warm when you are cold. It can guide you when you are lost. It can give you strength when you feel powerless. When I encounter enemies I can't defeat, they are what give me endless power. They are what tell me that I can't die, that I can't lose. That's why I'm still alive today. Having cut yourself off from emotion, you will never be able to feel the warmth of sunlight. Long Chen looked at Leng Yuan sincerely. Leng Yuan looked into the distance without saying anything. But her hands had unconsciously tightened. Long Chen was pleasantly surprised. He continued, Do you still remember when you were brought into the corrupt path to cultivate? You were still a child. Your group of 5 died one by one to the corrupt path's rules. In order to get vengeance for them, you cut off the head of your instructor. What were you trying to gain from that? When it was only you and your best friend left, when you decided to give the chance to live to her, did you think about what you were trying to gain? When your best friend intentionally died to your blade because she understood you all too well, did she think about what she was getting in return? Long Chen's voice was very solemn and very convincing. Most importantly, he was bringing up the miserable story that Leng Yuan had told him. A crystalline tear dropped onto the desert. Leng Yuan's eyes were unfocused as she was lost in her distant memories. Long Chen continued again, You felt what emotions are. Your emotions are still there. All you have to do is use your heart to feel them, and the warmth of the sun will fill your heart. Walk out from the shadows cast over your heart. Then you will find that the sunlight is so warm that many companions are waiting for you in the sunlight. Will you be there in the sunlight as well? Leng Yuan turned to look at Long Chen once more. Her flawless face was touched with crystalline tears, but her eyes were still icy. Of course, as long as you dash, Long Chen brazenly stretched out his hand toward Leng Yuan's face. But just as his hand was about to touch her cheek, lightning runes lit up on his feet, and he shot back. It was like a cord tied around his waist had suddenly pulled him backward. And yet, despite how fast he was, a bone sword still cut across his waist. If he had been the slightest bit slower, he'd have been cut in two. Fuck, you really are ill. Why would you suddenly attack? Cursed Long Chen. Ha! Leng Yuan laughed. The tears on her face vanished, and she appeared just as icy as ever. Long Chen, I didn't think your storytelling skills are so skilled. They're not one whit inferior to your fighting skills. Teased Leng Yuan, brushing back a stray hair behind her ear. I have many other skills too, but I worry you won't get the pleasure of enjoying them, raged Long Chen, saying something completely immoral. He truly was infuriated. He had been duped. He really had thought he had moved Leng Yuan, but she had just been toying with him. I do want to enjoy them. But do you have the guts? Asked Leng Yuan. She wasn't angry. She felt happy seeing Long Chen clenching his teeth, his face flushed. Can you and I not properly speak? I don't want to be your enemy. Long Chen took a deep breath and did his best to calm down. He had always felt Leng Yuan to be an extremely difficult person to handle. He didn't feel like Leng Yuan was his enemy, as the two of them didn't have any real enmity between them. However, they weren't friends either, because Leng Yuan had her illness. When her illness erupted, she would want to kill him. Of course we can. You're the man I favor. The only precondition is that you can survive my attacks. Leng Yuan smiled. Do you have some illness? I never provoked you, so why do you want to kill me? If you have an illness, tell me. I have medicine, raged Long Chen. You don't like fierce girls? Don't you feel that this kind of hunting and killing game is very stimulating? Let me show you. I'm going to attack. Leng Yueyan's smile disappeared, and she unsheathed her bone sword. The void was cut in two. When she unsheathed her sword, she was still 10 meters away. But strangely, without making a move as she slashed her sword, she appeared in front of him like a phantom. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.